যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. I hope the audio is coming fine, right? Yeah, it is coming fine, I think. So, hi Varun Dev, hi Rishabh, hi Anand, hi Gautam. Wait, I'm not going to respond to the comments right now. We'll just go through the speech first, and then it will be opened up to the members of the channel. The link has been given to a members only post in the community tab, okay? And guys, for those of you who are joining our channel for the first time, do consider donating to a little something called the Kaal Bhairav Ashtakam Vigilance project. You can check out all about it in the description box. I won't spend too much time right now describing it. I will do it after the live stream. So a lot of commies from Kolkata have been talking about boycotting Steven Wilson's upcoming concert in November in Kolkata. Steven Wilson, one of the most popular original singer-songwriters of the world right now. And by singer-songwriter, I mean that a person who writes his own songs, makes the melody himself, sings it, is basically the brains behind an album or the entire project, and does not have a team of 50 writers, 50 arrangers, 50 composers, 50 lyricists, etc. Like that, he's not a manufactured artist like Taylor Swift or people like the pop stars and stuff. Now, yeah, this will be, I think, a 2.5 hour stream. So, Steven Wilson, a guy from England, also used to be the vocalist of a band called Porcupine Tree, is coming to India for the third or fourth time. I have seen him live in Shillong in 2016. Now, a lot of commies are boycotting his show because he is a Zionist, apparently. I didn't know about it, but apparently he has said that, yeah, Israel deserves to exist. Therefore, he's a Zionist. On the heels of that incident, now Adil Rashid, one of the best guitarists Kolkata has ever produced, you could call him pretty much Kolkata's Slash, maybe. Slash, the famous guitarist from Guns N' Roses. He got into a bit of trouble with his fans on Facebook for criticizing Ozzy Osbourne right after his passing. Ozzy Osbourne, who is the father of metal music, essentially. The man who created the sound, the genre called metal, by expressing himself, his crazy mind. He was a hugely troubled person, was infamous for animal cruelty as well. And later on, he mended his ways. He worked with animal rescue groups and stuff, and animal rights groups, etc. But anyway, he also was apparently a Zionist. And once I came to know now that he even called up BBC once to tone down and ask them to tone down their coverage of Palestine or Israel's attacks on Palestine, something like that. So guitarist Adil Rashid of the band called Underground Authority from Kolkata, who many of you all must have seen live in other cities in the country. They are insanely popular all over the country ever since they went to India's Got Talent and got famous for getting appreciated by Kiran Kher, Sajid Khan, Salman Khan, etc. Now, that band pretty much changed the face of live music, live Bollywood music in the country. That band, Arijit Singh, got inspired from them, did rock versions, and then live music changed forever in India. Now everyone does really, really good rock versions of their songs whenever they play live. Now that band's guitarist Adil Da, I know him personally. He got into a bit of trouble for criticizing Ozzy after his passing for being Zionist. Now, he didn't criticize him for killing 17 kittens, but that's what he was bothered by. And everyone criticized him. His status got viral, and a lot of people gave him gali on the shared statuses as well. Many people commented that, oh, you never speak about Murshidabad, etc. Those kinds of controversial things, touchy subjects people did bring up in the end. But interestingly, a lot of people said that, no, bro, you got to separate the art from the artist. And we must always discuss that. How much do we separate the art from the artist? And I think it's easy for someone to say it if someone is not really that invested mentally, psychologically, subconsciously invested in that topic in which that person is maybe infamous. And then maybe you can actually easily think of separating the art from the artist, etc. But if it's a topic that you really do care about, it might be tough. I don't know if I would be able to separate the art from the artist if the guy was known for animal cruelty in his basement every day. I don't know. I honestly don't know what it would be like to separate the art from the artist in that case. But we are not going to do that. We are, in this case, at least in today's live stream, we are not going to we are going to separate the historian from the historian's political views. Today, what you are going to witness with me right now is an absolute masterclass in historical sociology and historiography in general. You all know from our live streams of discussing Max Weber's book Religion of India that up until the portions we have read so far, at least we have discussed so far, Max Weber has been insanely appreciative of Indian culture and ancient India, right? Among many other examples, he calls India the least anti-climatic society he has ever come across. Okay. Anti-climatic means the idea that, oh, what's the point of earning money? Renounce, brother, renounce. Kya hai paisa, haath ki mail hai. These sorts of things are called anti-crematism. Okay. A sort of dislike or a show off of dislike towards money. And Max Weber says India had the least amount of that renunciated spirit. Then he wonders, why couldn't then capitalism happen in India? So first, when I found out that Romila Thapar was very critical of Max Weber in this particular speech, I thought, oh, I guess she's just being the usual critic of Indian society. Therefore, she hates Max Weber when Max Weber appreciates India. Seeing the speech, I learned that, oh no, that's not really the case. She kind of touches upon the aspects where Max Weber does appreciate India and says that no, he doesn't get India. In the parts where Max Weber actually isn't even that all that vitriolic in his criticism towards India, he just says, well, India is a land of villages. The way I'm seeing it, he was operating on early colonial data. Okay. He didn't even read Arthashastra. If he had read Arthashastra, he would have converted to Hinduism because he liked Manusmriti already so much. No, I'm confusing him with Nietzsche. But anyway, Max Weber was aware of those sorts of texts. But anyway, he likes all that stuff. But when it comes to why capitalism didn't happen in India, he kind of takes the religion is different, therefore didn't happen, or the Dumontian way of looking at India, okay? Which people will say this is just Orientalism. And see, there are, in general, a disagreement among academics on how to view the world. And I think more legit the academic in terms of credentials, or the more declaredly leftist or liberal, the more they seem to be on the side of the view or the opinion that there are no clash of civilizations going on. There's just a difference in resources and some geographical factors maybe. Excuse me. And therefore, people all over the world are pretty much the same kinds of people, only it's their behavior is predicated on the amount of wealth they have at that point of time. I'm inclined to believe this way of thinking more, and there are others who believe this particular view, which is supported by many leftists all over the world, and many even right wingers all over the world. That no, essentially, I think don't any leftists believe this. It's mainly believed by right wingers of the world. Some liberals do believe it, that there's essentially a clash of civilizations going on. Eastern civilization is a particular kind of civilization, or at least Hindu or Indian civilization. Chinese civilization is a particular kind of worldview. Western civilization is a particular thing. It doesn't have to do with West industrialization or industrialization in a particular point in history. And India is forever villages just because our urbanization happened before they even found out the word urbanization. Therefore, we are a land of villages, etc. And Max Weber kind of falls into that trap as well. Okay. So Romila Thapar absolutely destroys our bro Max Weber here, whom we jokingly call him RSS Kadalla because he's so appreciative of Indian society. Okay, up until like 38-40 pages of his book Religion of India, it would almost seem like an RSS pamphlet. कि इंडिया कितना बढ़िया था बार बार बोलते ही जा रहा है, ठीक है. That guy, when he criticizes India a little, or even unknowingly ends up making India seem like a little backward, Romila Thapar dives in and defends India. That is the topic of today's video. Okay, this is insane. And you'll notice, see, when people like Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, like his paper on caste, if you leave these people to just academia, they can do a stellar job. When you allow them to play politics, that's when their other vested interests and base instincts turn up. That's the problem. So we are going to look at Romila Thapar's speech in a place called SOAS, University of London. SOAS is School of African and School of Oriental and African Studies. SOAS. Okay. Now we will check it out at 1.5x. She speaks pretty slowly, and get ready for a brilliant. If you're not a social science person, gear up with a bag of popcorn, because this is top-notch, stellar work in historical sociology and even history studying in general. Okay, check this out.
Occasion of the double 100th anniversary celebrations of SOAS and of Max Weber's study on Hinduism and Buddhism. I'm delighted to welcome her on behalf of us all.
Professor Flugel, Professor Winster, and friends. 40 years ago, I read the more commonly quoted writings of Max Weber. Having written my reaction to his views in a paper for a conference, I left it at that. I have never regarded myself as knowledgeable on Max Weber, nor am I a specialist in Indian religions, nor am I a sociologist. So I was pleasantly surprised, slightly amazed, therefore, at being invited to participate in a seminar to assess his views on Indian religions. Thank you very much for the invitation, though I must confess that I feel at the moment a little like what Daniel must have felt like in the lion's den. My present thoughts have been culled from recent rereadings of Weber on India and from a more firmly historical perspective. I recognize that Weber was not a historian, but he does examine the origins of the present as in his historical perspective on capitalism. Questioning some of his assertions about India has made me think further about why I sometimes disagree and sometimes agree with what he writes. This is always a useful exercise. My approach is essentially that of a historian. Given the constraint of time this evening, I shall restrict myself to Weber's comments on Hinduism and leave those on Buddhism to the conference. I am assuming also a familiarity on your part with his arguments, so I do not have to repeat them. I shall merely draw attention to some current views that have a bearing on these. Weber's idea of India, especially of its past, was largely the one that was prevalent in Europe a century ago. This was to be expected. But these ideas have since altered substantially. This naturally would affect theories of explanation both then and now.
These are very, very fair points to make, because the data that Max Weber was operating on, उसके बाद और बहुत बढ़िया क्वालिटी डेटा कलेक्ट हुआ है. अब वो कलेक्ट करके कुछ लोगों ने एकेडेमिया के अंदर ये प्रमाण किया है कि भाई कास्टिज्म में उतना रिजिड कास्ट हायरार्की नहीं है, रिजर्वेशन गलत है. पीपल लाइक आंद्रे बेती एंड Surinder Jotka, a lot of people touch upon the idea of, even Dipankar Gupta, they just touch upon this idea. They don't want to get too controversial. They say that, okay, the reasons for which you are giving reservations, they don't really exist. Andre Beti goes a step ahead and says reservations are useless. I don't remember exactly if Surinder Jotka also said this, but as far as I remember, he kind of hinted that, yeah, reservations are kind of pointless. But after all, other quality data that's coming in, that's being used in academia, it's being used by some people to prove this, that reservations are kind of pointless, casteism is kind of irrelevant. If at all there is casteism, it's not uniform in the same way everywhere. The hierarchies are different in every location. Some people, I don't know who in academia, but people who are in the undergrad and master's levels, they are taught that Hinduism is uniquely evil because they have created an uniquely evil system like the caste system, and there's no way out of it unless we burn a few Manusmritis and reserve everything for anyone who came from a family whose ancestors may or may not have been oppressed 5,000 years back. That's the problem. But the mainstream view is unanimous that we will look at caste in the Dumontian way, which is not really agreed upon by the most legit of the academics inside academia. So now the fun part is that the academics, when they do try to comment on the politics of the land, they do go out on a limb and say stuff like, no, I'm sure that there was no Ram Mandir underneath the Babri Masjid. They're sure of that. They won't debate it in courts. But when it comes to caste, and they see that the politics of caste in India is based on stuff that is 180 degrees opposite of what they are saying on caste, people like Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, Dipankar Gupta, Andre Beti, Surinder Singh Jotka, Declan Quigley, Nicholas B. Dirks, etc., Hitesh Ranjan Shannal. In this situation, they don't comment. They don't go out on a limb and say, no, the caste politics you are doing is absolutely horseshit. That's not it. That's not how caste works, bro. They don't go and correct that. Where's my mouse pointer? So far, her critique is kind of fine that Max Weber was working on not accurate data, mostly accurate data.
Substantially. This naturally would affect theories of explanation both then and now. Whereas his studies of Europe are analytical and present new ways of examining the subject, his study of India, by contrast, conforms in the main to much of colonial writing, possibly because he had to rely largely on colonial writing on India. This has its inbuilt limitations, and there is an element of asymmetry, therefore, in his study of Europe and his study of India. A historian's perspective inevitably begins by placing the book in historiographical context and inquires about the sources consulted. Weber's sources were in the main documents that the British colonial government put together, such as census reports, the imperial gazetteers, the reports of Herbert Risley, and such like. And added to this were the writings of Vincent Smith, Grant Duff, and Baden-Powell. Weber also had recourse to various European Orientalists, especially on Indian religions. His range of reading for this purpose remains very impressive. Our access today, however, is to a far greater range of sources and to their analytical readings, and these provide different interpretations. A frequent assumption in much of the earlier writing was that the Orient was the other of Europe. It was legitimate to presume that India was fundamentally different, and to ask why this was so. But the answers were limited, as were the sources. Many theories of explanation were being discussed, including those of Marx and of Weber. Both drew attention to the absence of capitalism, but their explanations differed. Weber's question emerged from his theory that the Protestant ethic, with its rationality, was connected to the rise of capitalism in Europe.
Yeah, and this Romila Thapar kind of, I guess, saw as a compliment towards Protestant ethic, and she, as a true leftist atheist, could not have that, and she went ahead and she goes ahead and proves here why the absence of Protestantism really did not prevent the rise of capitalism in India, because India did have capitalism in its own way. This is almost a speech which libertarians can use to justify the capitalist pro-prosperity, pro-economic freedom past of India. Okay, this is a weird ass horseshoe ka ma ekdam theek hai.
Europe. Therefore, the absence might account for the absence of capitalism in India. Marx's explanation had to do with the internal contradictions in European society subsequent to the decline of feudalism and the transition to capitalism. For both of them, the pre-capitalist histories of Europe and India were dissimilar, but for different reasons. Yet neither used the same analytical methods for investigating both areas. The reading of Indian history tended to be more cursory, for a variety of reasons. Marx, however, did speak of colonialism in India and Ireland and drew attention to it in the making of British industrialization and capitalism. Weber gives little space to colonialism. Asia, as the other, was characterized by what was described essentially as Oriental despotism. Oriental societies were static, Their system of government had always been despotic. Therefore, to search for historical change seemed rather pointless. The past of India did not need to be investigated with searching questions, as had been the past of Europe. For understanding Europe, economic patterns, social structure, belief systems, and internal contradictions were correlated. This suggested well-demarcated stages of historical change. But less so for India. Weber's choice of the patrimonial state as applied to Indian history was perhaps not uninfluenced entirely by these notions of the Orient.
Yeah.
The non-European past was used largely to sharpen, through contrast, the contours of the argument for Europe. In arguing that capitalism could not have developed in India, Weber showed relatively less focused interest in the 18th and 19th centuries of Indian history. Viewed as a civilizational unit, it had to be surveyed in its entirety. Nor was there a questioning of the role of colonialism as intervening both in the economy of the colony and of that of the colonizer.
Yeah, this is the classic post-colonial critic, but see how much it almost echoes the sentiments of a lot of Occidentalists in the Indian right wing today.
What might now be argued is that it is not perhaps so much the absence of capitalism, but the absence of a type of capitalism in what were some of the otherwise wealthy Asian societies. Economic historians of recent times, as well as those participating in the current debate on the world system theory, maintain that India and China were the preeminent economies in Eurasia in the immediately pre-colonial centuries. Their wealth came largely from what has been called mercantile capitalism, with its extensive trading network. This would explain the power and the patronage of merchant businesses located in various parts of the country, from the Jains in Gujarat to the Chettiars in Tamil Nadu. What was lacking was the change to industrial capitalism that took place in northwestern Europe. In this, many factors played a role, not least that much of Southern Asia had been drawn into European colonialism during these centuries. Apart from all this, Weber's approach to Hinduism and Buddhism also drew in part from the prevailing concept of the world being divided into civilizations. These were viewed as distinct and segregated, defined by a specific territory, language, and religion, among other characteristics. For Indian civilization, the territory of British India was its location. It was articulated in Sanskrit and associated with Hinduism. Buddhism was less important, having been discovered later and not having survived in India to modern times. Islam was ignored despite its obvious presence. Civilizations were seen as self-contained. The porosity that we associate with them now was not recognized in those days. The definition of civilization also excluded the larger part of society. This may have fueled Weber's distinction between the wise and educated and what he calls the uncultured masses. Keeping all this in mind, I would now like to turn to the religion of India. Written a century ago, it is of much historiographical interest. Some concepts of that time are now being questioned or are being given variant meanings. This applies as much to European history as to any other. The key questions in a reading of the religion of India, it seems to me, are whether the descriptions of Indian religion and society as projected by Weber are still largely valid, and what are some of his ideas that might have been and could still be insightful. The essential problem that I have as a historian with Weber's views of India, as indeed those of Marx as well, is that they tend to be what I call context-free and chronos-free. What I mean by this is that there isn't enough awareness of the why, the how, and the when of the particular institutions being discussed. Some of these underwent substantial change over 3 millennia and virtually gave way to new ones. Some continued in a new garb. Weber argues for a nexus in Europe between the political economy of emergent capitalism and the religious form of the Protestant ethic. If this nexus is to be sought in India, then there has to be a comparable investigation of the political economy and its connection to the required religious ideas in order to determine the presence or absence of the nexus.
This section is very important for a lot of libertarians who don't know anything about Sanjeev Sanyal's works and stuff, those kinds of people, you know who I'm talking about, because they will realize, a lot of them do believe that Protestantism is the way out of poverty for India, and a lot of people believe that because we don't have Protestantism, therefore we will probably be left behind forever. They are that pessimistic. Romila Thapar is arguing here that India never required Protestantism to flourish. to be mercantile?
Political economy and its connection to the required religious ideas in order to determine the presence or absence of the nexus. The religions of India are described more often without much reference to the political economy with which they would have been linked. I would therefore like to consider a few aspects among those that Weber regards as distinctively different in India. These are the patrimonial state, caste, and religion. I would also like to see how the notion of legitimation is apparent in relation to these. Weber's view of particular kinds of states reflects in part the general interests at that time in defining the state, a general interest that existed among modern European philosophers. The patrimonial state, as applied to India, assumed the centralized control of the ruler, to whom flowed all the revenues produced by the peasantry. Ensuring the flow was the responsibility of the administration. The producers of the wealth really had no right of refusal.
This is Max Weber's view. Okay, now Romila Thapar is going to critique it.
This static condition implied an absence of historical change.
And remember, India, no matter what else, India is never static. That's one accusation you can't hurl against Indian society.
The patriarchal family and caste were linked to the Indian state. The characteristics of the state were the cause of the endemic poverty of the Indian peasant at all times. It was a permanent condition because of the inability of either the administrators or the producers to change it. Today, this argument of a relatively uniform, unchanging state, characterizing much of pre-colonial history, would be regarded probably as ahistorical. The analysis of available data, as for instance for the 17th and 18th centuries, points to demography, the function of institutions, and technology being roughly comparable in India and Europe. Even prior to that, systems of governance do not suggest static conditions. Studies of state formation have shown that the state in India changed substantially in form and function over the centuries. Early elements of governance lay in the Ganasangha system of rudimentary kingship and chiefships, some of which gradually mutated into kingdoms. The Mauryan state, although different, would still be seen as a differentiated imperial system. Its administration was very complex, with some centrally administered areas and others less so in varying degrees. The breakup of the short-lived Mauryan Empire was followed by a scatter of kingdoms. Their economies were based on direct revenue collection from both privately owned and state-owned lands, cultivated by tenants observing diverse kinds of tenancies. And revenue also came from commerce.
See,
Subsequent to this, in the post-Gupta period, there were kingdoms, some large and some quite small, where the major states negotiated their authority with a hierarchy of intermediaries.
this section sounds like a libertarian critique of Sanatan economics, doesn't it?
Referred to as Samantas and later as Iqtidars, Jagirdars, Zamindars, and such like. Their powers and rights were negotiated in various ways according to dynasty and time. New dynasties emerged from their ranks, and at any point in time, the picture was not identical for the entire subcontinent. This is a question that comes up repeatedly as one generalizes about India.
Yeah, Anand, rewind just at least 3-4 minutes, because she is now getting into heavy criticism of Max Weber, where in fact she sounds like a libertarian criticizing the Sanatan economic socialists as well, okay? Because she is pointing out that no, where Protestantism? Who Protestantism? India never required it. They had so many ways of doing commerce and business. Check this out. And then she goes ahead and gives a gigantic list from ancient history to medieval.
In time, the picture was not identical for the entire subcontinent. This is a question that comes up repeatedly as one generalizes about India. The state in Indian history was generally described in the 19th century as having had an essentially agrarian economy, other activities being marginal. Weber refers to India as a land of villages. This impression has been corrected in recent studies. Income at different levels of the economic hierarchy.
Yeah, India, land of villages, forever, though definitely not, because there were urban centers and stuff. I wonder if Weber was talking about the times he was describing, maybe just colonial periods, maybe.
Also came from an extensive commerce, both overland and maritime. This increased noticeably.
Now, here again, her criticism of Indian society, that stays caste because it's hierarchical, because it creates inequality, etc. But her criticism is honest because, again, people on the libertarian side who believe in free markets and who don't give a shit about hierarchy, who don't care about income inequality, they can use Irfan Habib and Romila Thapar to point out to Sanatan economists that to say that, see, there were hierarchies, there were there were clear examples of hierarchies which happened because of different kinds of commercial activities. So where was this past phase of Hindu equality before the evil paw of Western style capitalism and Adam Smith's evil book came upon the minds of Indians and brainwashed them? Where, bro? So Romila Thapar, in fact, is in her mind, deep in her heart, actually criticizing Indian society for not having equality and having hierarchies, etc. She's just saying, wait, Max Weber, if you do think it's a compliment to have those things, and therefore Europe was able to achieve them because of Protestantism, no, hold my beer. That's not the case, because India did that evil thing without the help of Protestantism. That's basically, I think, Romila Thapar's argument.
From the early second millennium AD, with a growth in urbanization. The administration of cities hosting artisanal production, markets, and commerce obviously differed.
Neon Sanatan economics is Gandhian socialism with a little bit more of anger and less obsession with nonviolence, etc., but mainly socialism.
From the administration of areas where land revenue was primary. There was a striking expansion in the number and size of guilds handling this change.
Guilds. What do we also know them as?
This also affected their relationship to urban centers and political power.
Exactly. Why?
The
Because of proximity to power. The distance between you and the ruler is everything. That determines a whole bunch of other things, metaphorical and physical material things.
functioning of the patrimonial state in India was said to rely on physical force and the administration, both very closely controlled. The figures for the Nanda Maurya
The fact that the claim that it was very, very centrally controlled, etc., this is the Oriental view. This is the colonial view. Romila Thapar is critiquing it. Okay, now she's going to give examples that why that's an absolute horseshit claim. It was a decentralized society. It was a practically anarcho-capitalist society inside a government. They were, therefore, you could say, minarchist societies.
army are mentioned by historians like Vincent Smith. They came from Greek sources.
Neon, policy-wise, yes, but naming and branding-wise, no. Branding-wise, so it will be fully wet in Sanskrit terms and saffron vibes and Hindu thoughts and stuff.
And they are huge and probably exaggerated to justify Alexander's decision to discontinue his campaign. The numbers also vary fairly enormously from text to text, making them somewhat doubtful. More to the point, the economy even of the Mauryan state could not have financed such a large force. And apart from the regular army, contingents were recruited when required from...
Right. So you see, the kind of army required to do that kind of central planning and centrally controlled forces and an economy, etc., full, everything depending on the Raja's danda. I tell you guys, India was not a king-centered, king-dependent, king-obsessed society. You think of Indian society that way because you read the Puranas, which were funded by Rajas or written by Brahmins at the behest of some Rajas, or just to please some Raja, or on their own doing their research and stuff, thinking about philosophy, while being funded by Rajas. All the texts that don't talk about Rajas obsessively, they are the ones which will kind of hint at you that there are so many stuff for other people to follow in their lives on autopilot that the Raja is not important. And repeatedly, historians have said this. People have said, legit historian after legit historian has mentioned that back then in India, it did not matter in the life of a common man in the far corners of the country, far away from a particular king, that on their lives did not depend on who really was the king. If their current king gets defeated in a battle, their life goes on. They get the news 4 days later. Their life goes on just the way it was. So it is a decentralized libertarian society. It was not a Maoist or Pisila Mahalanobish Congressy society.
Various groups of mercenaries. More to the point, the economy even of the Mauryan state could not have financed such a large force. And apart from the regular army, contingents were recruited when required from various groups of mercenaries and from other resources, such as the soldiers maintained by guilds. The peasants, it is said, were kept unarmed. But the local village heroes of post-Mauryan times were well equipped. They defended their villages against cattle raiders and in local battles without the assistance of the king's army.
भाई ये तो मैक्स वेबर से लेके इंडियन राइट विंग का ले रही है ये इंडियन राइट विंग मीनिंग द सोशलिस्ट राइट विंग व्हिच वी डोंट रियली whose policies we don't really like. Without the assistance of the king's army, खुद का अपना इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग डिफेंस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है, मैन पावर है, बेसिकली प्राइवेट आर्मी है गाइस. This is private army. This is almost anarcho-capitalism, not really, because there are borders. This is somewhere on the right of minarchism, almost on the way towards anarcho-capitalism, with own private armies who don't require the king's guards. What more example of the fusion of libertarianism and Hindutva can I give you guys? Stop fucking reading Gandhians. Stop with the Gandhism. We have a bright future ahead of us, and it's libertarian and it's Hindutva.
These events are memorialized in a multitude of hero stones in many. Apart from the regular army, contingents were recruited when required from various groups of mercenaries and from other resources, such as the soldiers maintained by guilds. The peasants, it is said, were kept unarmed.
Bhai, just look through the terms. Think through the terms. Mercenaries maintained by guilds. इसका मतलब क्या है? प्राइवेट आर्मीज है जो कि कास्ट के तौर पे ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं, जी रहे हैं, सस्टेन कर रहे हैं. अब क्या ही बोले. I'm all the हिंदुत्वादी सोशलिस्ट आर्गुमेंट्स आर कमिंग टू माय माइंड एंड आई एम गेटिंग पिस्ड ऑफ. अब क्या बोले. वो लोग तो आशा है कि देखेंगे ये वीडियो कभी ना कभी और रीड थ्रू करेंगे between these terminologies that she is using. But this is a clear defense of free markets and libertarianism in the face of when face to face with socialists, both from the left and the right. And the only difference between Romila Thapar and us would be that she thinks that hierarchy is inherently, implicitly evil. We don't care about inequality. That's all.
Of mercenaries and from other resources, such as the soldiers maintained by guilds. The peasants, it is said, were kept unarmed. But the local village heroes of post-Mauryan times were well equipped. They defended their villages against cattle raiders and in local battles.
No, Abhay, that's the wrong way of thinking it, because remember, this decentralization of defense was not happening inside one large state. Okay. The decentralization that did affect us was that there was no question of centralization in the first place because they were separate kingdoms. Okay. We can talk about centralization versus decentralization inside a particular legal territory. But here the number of legal territories are themselves in such high numbers that the unity cannot even be conceived by anyone. We're talking about countless numbers of states here.
Of the king's army. These events are memorialized in a multitude of hero stones in many parts of the subcontinent. The patrimonial state assumes a small elite as recipients of the income produced by lower castes. However, we now know that the wealth was not siphoned off by the few, but actually financed the many hierarchies in the system as well. The producers of the wealth did not consist of single castes, but a range of castes with interlocked occupations. The culture of jatis, more than varnas, conditioned by occupation and customary law, more often than not, also determined their religious identity. To give greater weightage to varna than to jati in studying caste misses out on some facets of how Indian society functioned. The noticeably rational Arthashastra of Kautilya, some people say almost cynically rational, refers to the 7 limbs of the state. The army and the administration were 2 among the 7. The other 5 were the ruler, the territory, the capital, the treasury, and allies. The ruler was required to integrate the functions of the 7, and that is what gave him central importance. But when one looks at the process of integration in itself, one realizes that this process was a curve.
Yeah, I personally agree that we need a central government to do certain things, which is why I'm a minarchist and a national libertarian, not an anarcho-capitalist. And so was the India of those days, that there was one at least king. The king did not commit suicide. Chalo decentralization karte hain, hum chale gaye sannyasi banne. That was not the case. But I'm not being minarchist just because ancient India was that way. I don't base my arguments on how Sanatan it sounds. but it is what it is. What I'm proposing for, incidentally, was going on in India back then anyway.
On his power. There is also much evidence on the functioning of administration from detailed inscriptions of pre-modern times. Issued by local administrators, they were inscribed in public places. Among other useful aspects of local activity, some of these record major decisions regarding the powers and activities of civic office bearers. The decisions involve local communities, temple administrators, and officers of the state. The communities can be upper caste Brahmin communities with their own privileges or wider communities of other occupational castes. The concerns refer to
Suna kya? Anand is saying centralization is susceptible to stagnation. It always leads to stagnation, doesn't it? Divya, I would implore you to check it out from the beginning, because we are looking at a fascinating speech by Romila Thapar where she criticizes Max Weber for remotely hinting at India's backwardness in terms of its religiosity, because India couldn't become capitalist in the Western way by the time West did it, and Romila Thapar absolutely destroys Max Weber here.
in public places. Among other useful aspects of local activity, some of these record major decisions regarding the powers and activities of civic office bearers. The decisions
Now check out who were the civic office bearers.
involve local communities, temple administrators, and officers of the state. The communities can be upper caste Brahmin communities with their own privileges or wider communities of other occupational castes.
Wider.
The concerns refer to a number of activities, including participation in various bodies of administration and particularly bodies deciding on specific taxes. At least for the castes above the level of artisans and peasants, the system was not consistently oppressive. Nevertheless, there are occasional complaints against.
Okay. Now her definition of oppressive is that the artisans were not as rich as the kings and the bureaucrats and stuff, which is where I will agree, but I won't agree if it is claimed to be a uniquely evil situation for India, because that's what is inevitable. That's what happens even today. Artisans and carpenters, a job relatively easier to do than becoming, or at least passing for the exams of an IAS or becoming a PhD, etc. So those jobs will always be more valued in society. If that's oppression, that's going on even today. That has nothing to do with Manusmriti. That's all. But whatever she is saying is factually true. That whatever was the oppression, that oppression happened in the lowest of castes. But among the more upper castes, in the, I guess, the general castes of today, there was a lot of mobility, at least in this context even.
And peasants, the system was not consistent activities, including participation in various bodies of administration and particularly bodies deciding on specific taxes. At least for the castes above the level of artisans and peasants, the system was not consistently oppressive. Nevertheless, there are occasional complaints against oppressive rulers. This resulted in peasants migrating to a neighboring kingdom, a reaction much dreaded by rulers, we are told, since it resulted in decline.
See, this is an interesting answer to Irfan Habib's paper on caste. Irfan Habib in the end questions and almost desperately cries out loud, asking, since there was so much oppression and hierarchy-based oppression because of the caste system, why didn't the Dalits rise up in protest? Why weren't there significant anti-upper caste movements in Indian society? Well, this is the answer. They didn't have to do unionbazi and hallabazi and drag the factory owner out by his collar. The entire caste simply up and left the village. पैसा नहीं दोगे, गाड़ में डालो नौकरी, हम चले दूसरे village में. That's what's called pioneering spirit in the West, in USA. Okay, you just leave, you move around all the time. That's what used to happen in India also. भोसरी वाले हमको सारा दिन बोलते हैं कि why do you care about the West so much? Every great fucking society operates and functions in relatively similar ways, bro. Any great society in history operates in the same way. So when India was great, it operated like USA of different periods. Okay, you can't get around that. Exact cheezein nahi honge, magar it will rhyme. It won't be the exact repetition of history. So an entire caste who are not happy with the payments, they leave and go to a different and settle in a different state, in a different city, town. Okay, that's how so many castes have different kinds of genetics. Okay, I don't know what's the mystery between Marathis and Bengalis. Marathi language and Bengali language has some similar words, some common words which are not there, or at least in that pronunciation, in other Indian languages. Then the surnames that end with kar, which is very common among Marathis, this Tendulkar, Manjrekar, etc. Now there's a surname called Kormokar in Bengali. There's a surname called Kormokar even in Marathis. Okay, Karmakars. I wonder what's that. I think it might be because of these kinds of actions. One group of people from that caste simply up and leave because of for better salary.
Mining revenue. The Indian peasantry, when disgruntled, is associated with migration rather than rebellion, possibly because land was more easily available. But there is evidence of rebellion, and this evidence generally refers to the Samantas, the intermediary groups, sometimes referred to as feudatories, but landowners nevertheless. There is the Kaivarta revolt in Bengal in the early 2nd millennium AD, the Samantas leading the buffalo riding peasants against the king's forces. The aim was not only an objection to increased taxes, but also to claim new lands for cultivation.
Did you guys just hear what she said? भाई क्या बोली ये? टैक्सेस ज्यादा बढ़ गए थे, उसके खिलाफ राजा के विरुद्ध हल्ला बोल दिया, अपना वॉर कर लिया, और उस वक्त किसी ने जाके उनको नहीं बोला कि कौन से डीप स्टेट से पैसा खाया तुम, क्या ट्रम्प से पैसा खाया या लिबर्टेरियन पार्टी ऑफ यूएस से पैसा खाया. टैक्स बढ़ाएगा भोसड़ी, क्या टैक्स दिखाता है मदर जात बोल के बफेलो लेके बवाल कर दिया.
Referred to as feudatories, but landowners nevertheless. There is the Kaivarta revolt in Bengal in the early 2nd millennium AD, the Samantas leading the buffalo riding peasants against the king's forces. The aim was not only an objection to increased taxes, but also to claim new lands for cultivation. The argument in the debate today is, was it a peasant revolt or a revolt by the feudatories? Another situation occurred in Kashmir and is described at length by Kalhana in his Rajatarangani. Among the military organizations that were powerful in the area were the Tantrins and the Ekangas, who were a serious threat to the power of the Damara feudatories and the rulers.
This is a libertarian masterclass. This is a barrage of pure libertarian arguments against communist socialists and Hindutva socialists. Okay, और फिर क्या बुल राइडिंग करके रेबेलियन किया टैक्स इंक्रीज के खिलाफ? बुल राइडर कौन है? हाँ, वृषभ भरूद बन गए सब.
Over a longish period of time. Such instances point to each of the three levels, the producers, the intermediaries, and the state, having to negotiate their powers vis-a-vis each other. I am not arguing that there was no exploitation. I am not arguing that there was oppression. This was a given in most pre-modern society.
रोमिला थप्पड़ is saying कि इसको हम ऑपरेशन कितना भी बोल सकते हैं, अगर ऑपरेशन है भी भाई, ये हर जगह पे होता था, हर जगह पे होता था. This is our entire argument in the context of caste. Even Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, I think, believe it. But people who are fanboys of these scholars, they believe caste is uniquely evil. Hinduism is uniquely evil. This is not uniquely evil. This is universally evil. This happens everywhere. And that is just what Romila Thapar said. That's the nature of the world. Like, there are two quotes in this context that I really like. One of the professors of Thomas Swell once asked him, Thomas Swell, when he was a commie, once got up in class and asked his professor that how could man be so evil to come up with a concept like slavery? His professor says, well, that's what always happened. Think of what situation led to man thinking of a concept like freedom. Wonder about that. And there's another quote in this context that what causes capitalism doesn't cause poverty. Poverty is a default state. Capitalism uplifts people from poverty while not solving inequality, of course.
I am not arguing that there was oppression. This was a given in most pre-modern societies. What is debatable is whether it was so severe as to support sustained despotism, as was one of the colonial views. And we have to remember, of course, that the colonial perspective also had a political agenda.
Shit, I should have marked this as Romila Thapar becomes libertarian. I should have marketed it that way. Look at what she's saying. कि अच्छा इतना इंडिया में डेस्पोटिज्म हो गया था, ओरिएंटल डेस्पोटिज्म इतना सेंट्रलाइज था, भोसरी को देखो इतना डिसेंट्रलाइज था कि डेस्पोटिज्म पॉसिबल ही नहीं था. दिस इज रोमिला थापर्स आर्गुमेंट हियर.
And we have to remember, of course, that the colonial perspective also had a political agenda. Caste had a regional identity, but this did not restrict migrations. Learned Brahmins were in demand and were invited to settle in various parts of the subcontinent, legitimizing newly created kingdoms. Stone carvers and temple builders were mobile, judging by the stylistic.
Legitimizing new sects by what does it entail, guys? Do you all know what she's talking about? Legitimizing others. This is the eternal threat of Sanatan Dharma. Okay, eternal koth called Sanatan Dharma, in which there are different strands and threads being tied together by the Brahmins who are roaming about in the country and accommodating people into their fold. Okay, some shamanic priests are becoming Brahmins, or if they are not, they are going about their own ways, enjoying the privileges of Brahmins. Someone has joined the conversation. Aryan Invader, I will take you on after the speech is done. Okay, after that, members can join in a conversation to discuss what the fuck did we just learn from Romila Thapar. Okay, the members can join, the non-members can comment in the live chat. We will keep looking at it.
Had a political agenda. Caste had a regional identity, but this did not restrict migrations. Learned Brahmins were in demand and were invited to settle in various parts of the subcontinent, legitimizing newly created kingdoms. Stone carvers and temple builders were mobile, judging by the stylistic similarities in distant places. Occupational castes such as weavers migrated from Gujarat in the west to Tamil Nadu in the south, attracted by the expanding textile trade from South India. Far from being only a land of villages, Indian traders were found in commercial centers across Asia and often associated with a monetary economy. Among the more wealthy traders were the Brahmins, some making large profits in the horse trade of the northwest with Central Asia.
Brahmins were the wealthy traders. Chi. का बात हो गई. तो Varundev is asking a great question here. He's saying, Dada, despite these people in academia, how is it that these ideas are not popular? Academia shapes narratives, right? Then did we overrate academia's power? नहीं, Varundev, मजे की बात है कि these academics themselves don't want that narrative outside academia to be changed. This is why we will have to separate the history from the historian. Okay, we will have to ignore the historian, ignore the historian's views of politics. As simple as that. Nothing more, nothing less. We will just have to close our eyes whenever they start speaking on anything other than their topic inside academia. Okay, the moment they comment on politics, it's utter horseshit, and they have their own personal interests. And by personal interest, I don't mean property here and there. I mean, they genuinely believe that, I think it's best that we keep Hindus a little down. Otherwise, what if they up and become united and kick all the Muslims out of the country? तो ठीक है, थोड़ा डंडे पड़ रहे, पढ़ने दो. This is what people like Romila Thapar and Irfan Habib, I think, personally believe, which is why they believe in something that's 180 degrees opposite of the mainstream view on caste. They have never corrected these people. Both of them are alive. Both of them are active academics. Irfan Habib, with the help of somebody, I think, at least tweets all the time. Irfan Habib just 2-3 years back gave a speech in Presidency University, Kolkata, remotely over Google Meet and stuff. There, he gave that same speech on caste. He said the same things on caste, which I checked out right after I checked out Irfan Habib's paper on caste. Okay, so I found, wait, no one's even batting an eyelid here. No one's even surprised at the implications of what Irfan Habib is saying. Their brains are so dead. All the kids listening to his speech, all the undergrads and masters people of residency, they can't fathom that Irfan Habib is saying something that goes 180 degrees opposite of what they proclaim all day long. So, firstly, Varun Dev, these academics themselves are complicit in this phenomenon of their views not being the mainstream. More importantly, there have been other academics who do believe in those things. They are the Dumontian academics, the Dumontian sociologists, right, who believe everything in India and casteism happens because of specifically Manusmriti or the Dharma Shastras, etc. Those academics were there. Now, they are also propped up, or at least, if push comes to shove and you do ask a anti-caste politician that, who are your sources? Why are you saying these things? They will probably cite those Dumontian academics or Dumo themselves, if push came to shove and they actually knew what the fuck they were saying.
and many in the South Indian Ayavole guilds trading with Southeast Asia and associated with the Chola rulers. These guilds were not crippled by caste, as Weber maintains, or by the king. They were political and economic pressure groups maintaining their own relations with royalty.
Are the Sanatan economists listening? Is this anything different to what libertarians seek for their country? This is line after line of free markets and decentralized economies.
Guilds trading with Southeast Asia and associated.
See, repeatedly, the one recurring theme of this section of her speech is the absence of the dependence of different businessmen as well as the common people on the king. This is the key takeaway here, which is so damn important. She's going on mentioning examples that, okay, this happens, no one gives a shit about the king, they do it their own way. This happens, they get pissed off with the king and declare a war against the king, okay? No one is saying, okay, does the king think this is all right to do? Okay, is this feasible for the king to do? Then I will think, no, it's not okay for me to criticize the king because another king might get benefits. ऐसे चुतिया गांडू भोसरी वालों के तरह तब हमारे ancestors नहीं सोचते थे.
With the Chola rulers. These guilds were not crippled by caste, as Weber maintains, or by the king. They were political and economic pressure groups maintaining their own relations with royalty. In the Punjab, however, it was non-Brahman Khatri traders who were the dominant caste for many centuries.
So let's say they were the lobbyists of these times, right? They were the lobbies of those years. So you can argue that no, lobbyism is an evil thing and is a Western style capitalism because it happens in USSC, but it used to happen in India as well. But there are, I think, more non-corrupt ways of doing it. That I will agree. And back then, maybe it was not all corruption. Maybe some of it was corruption. So lobbying, maybe you can't blame it all on US. This is how elite advanced societies, people who are not diseased with slave fucking morality, people who are from the mastered morality, that this is how they operate, bro.
Over and above even the status of the Brahmins. The most prestigious.
I have to rewind once again, sorry.
Punjab, however, it was non-Brahman Khatri traders who were the dominant caste for centuries, over and above even the status of the Brahmins. The most prestigious religious sect was founded by the Khatri teacher Guru Nanak, who had distanced himself from Brahmanical Hinduism. Trade and commerce was not treated with odium, as Weber maintains, and many upper castes were in fact traders. Artisanal castes tended to be assertive, perhaps because of the urban ambiance. Production was central to the.
तो यहाँ पे मैक्स वेबर का आर्गुमेंट बेसिकली ये था कि पास्ट में इंडिया वाज अ सोसाइटी दैट हैड द लीस्ट अमाउंट्स ऑफ एंटी क्रोमेटिज्म, ओके, कि पैसा हाथ की मैल है वगैरह, ये इंडिया में सबसे कम बोला जाता था, मगर वो ग्रेजुअली चेंज हो गया. एक टाइम आ गया है, एटलीस्ट ड्यूरिंग द टाइम्स ऑफ लेट colonial period or the times when Max Weber is writing, that's when he says now Indian society has sort of a dislike and hatred towards finances and property and stuff, but Romila Thapar rejects even that.
Himself from Brahmanical Hinduism. Trade and commerce was not treated with odium.
Odium means hatred, okay? Max Weber argues that trade and commerce was getting treated with hatred.
Weber maintains, and many upper castes were in fact traders.
Because in the beginning of the book, that was Max Weber's argument, that if India had the least amount of anti-Semitism, then why didn't it evolve into capitalism? Maybe because there wasn't Protestantism to save India. Not really in that tone. I'm talking like a 60-year-old Hindutvadi, but that's not how Max Weber wrote it. That's not his tone. But Romila Thapar, in fact, is offended enough to consider it to be in that tone. Okay, and she's defending India in that sense.
As Weber maintains, and many upper castes were in fact traders. Artisanal castes tended to be assertive.
It's live, but I would really implore you to check it out from the beginning, because this is I actually marketed it in a wrong way. What we are now noticing is that Romila Thapar is giving libertarian arguments after libertarian arguments against Max Weber when he has hinted that India was kind of too religious to be capitalist, etc. Romila Thapar ignores his let's say, compliments towards India and gets to the slight criticisms of India and Hinduism that Max Weber has made, and she proves him wrong with apparently arguments that are completely libertarian, that can be used by libertarians, because she is saying, yes, see, there were advanced economies and hierarchies and it was decentralized as fuck. People were declaring war against the king because some taxes were raised. Okay, these are the examples that we just discussed in the last 5-10 minutes. Okay, but her belief is that hierarchies and capitalism is bad. Therefore, she is not appreciative of those things. She's not saying these things as a compliment. We will take these things as a compliment because we know hierarchies are inevitable and inequality is impossible. And economic equality is impossible. I don't think they are libertarian arguments. I have a different perspective. We can definitely use it though. Yeah. She's not giving these as libertarian arguments. She is giving them as, I think, criticisms only. In a way to say that, okay, don't consider us that backward to be capitalist. Yes, capitalism is bad, and maybe we are not that evil in the capitalist way. We have evil in our own way, but we were definitely not too dumb to be capitalist, if that's what Max Weber hinted at. Romila Thapar considers it to be that way.
That's because of the urban ambience. Production was central to the activities of such groups, since it was not limited to local exchange, but was frequently geared to the more extensive trade of distant markets. The bonds of belonging to a guild provided a firm identity. This often held even when the guild dispersed and its members took to other occupations, as happened with the famous silk weavers of Mandsaur.
So, a freedom in choosing professions even. Kahan hai birth-based?
The bonding was useful when demands were made on the state. There are many records, as for instance, from the states of Rajasthan, which refer to decisions taken by Jati Panchayats, the caste councils similar to guilds, and conveyed to both the local administration and the rulers. These could be for a remission of tax, or a firm refusal to pay a newly imposed tax, or to adjudicate over disputes involving money and land transfers. Civil law virtually required the state to accept the decision and advice of the Jati Panchayat. The state had to agree to their terms.
Shit.
Artisanal production, controlled by merchants and guilds, was crucial to maintaining an ongoing economy, especially in the period just preceding colonialism. The politics of patronage was not just a simple matter of the ruler bestowing wealth on a recipient.
हाँ, अब वो गिल्ड ज्यादा यूनियनबाजी की तरह होने लगा था, शायद इसलिए इन्वेजन्स हो गए.
It involved a careful assessment of the status and authority of the community, its economic potential, and its religious affiliations. This, in part, accounts for the fact that individual rulers often patronized more than one religious sect, and frequently sects that were in opposition to each other. This
India used to be minarchist, and then devolved into socialism, and that's when the invasion started happening. Varun Dev is saying, Dada, we should show Hindutva socialists that capitalism liberty was originally our idea, and use Sanskrit. Yes, absolutely.
Patronage could change from king to king in a dynasty. Weber's study of the religion of India rightly discusses both caste and religion, but the significant link between the two remains somewhat elusive or fails to get fully connected. Colonial definitions of caste tend to give more space to Varna than to Jati. Given the origin of Varna, it was assumed that the caste Hindus would take it as divinely sanctioned and unalterable. Besides, where a large unchanging society is assumed, there was little need to recognize change in the functioning of caste. But change is recorded. The conversion of non-caste to caste, registering its recruitment, is interestingly discussed by Weber.
Lol.
As has been noted by sociologists, this process hints at some similarity with what was more recently called Sanskritization. This involved lower castes imitating the lifestyle of the upper castes, except, of course, that the former had to have the income to do so.
Income to do so, because you have to be from the same status, because castes are Indian status groups. By the way, the Shakya clan, similar. An endogamous tribe enters the caste system, remains endogamous. They did not enter the caste system and suddenly become endogamous because of the evil Hindu caste system.
One could ask whether the method of conversion to caste suggested a possible form of social mobility, where a lower caste, changing its occupation and rituals, could be recruited into a higher caste. There was no need to wait until one's next birth. Or could some change in occupations become...
ये किसके against debate है? Yes, ये कि RSS की दल्ली.
Its occupation and rituals, a possible form of social mobility, where a lower caste, changing its occupation and rituals, could be recruited into a higher caste. There was no need to wait until one's next birth.
Shit.
Or could some change in occupations become acceptable among upper castes, such as Brahmins taking to trade and agriculture without losing caste? But the changes that took place behind the scenes, as it were, in Varna identity, or the shifting in the hierarchies within Jatis over a period, has been less noticed. If the model as given in the social codes of the Dharmashastras was subverted, although leaving the facade more or less intact, then the process of subversion has to be studied.
Holy shit.
Were those called...
बोल रहे कि धर्मशास्त्र को सबवर्ट भी नहीं किया, बवाल में नहीं गए, मगर इग्नोर करके अपने अपने कास्ट चेंज करके बिजनेस भी करते रहे. क्या बात है?
If the model as given in the social codes of the Dharmashastras was subverted, although leaving the facade more or less intact, then the process of subversion has to be studied. Were those called Dalits today, the untouchables of the past, the only permanent, unchanging castes in Indian history?
Here, we can agree. I don't have the exact genetic data of all these Dalit families, which even Ambedkar doesn't claim that they were Dalits forever and after. But whoever was the Dalit, they never, that Dalit group probably never. No, I think it has to be argued in the genetic way. I think she's disagreeing with Ambedkar right here. Because Ambedkar says that those who were Dalits were not Dalits forever and ever. She's saying whoever is a Dalit today was a Dalit. Their ancestors were also Dalits. And it would be believable, it would make sense, because after all, there was not enough technological innovation. There was capitalism, there was not enough technological innovation. When that doesn't happen, there can't be huge economic disruptions and therefore mobility of different people. So that there is. So therefore, we must take it now to the next step. Like there has happened 1991. Now we need 1991s in every 10 years in India, with repeated disruptions and significant technological jumps and shifts and innovations, which will lead to breakdowns of every caste system that occurs and stabilizes in those 10 years. They get destroyed, and new people from the Dalit classes of today can again hope to go up in the ladder.
Century ago,
Anand is saying no, she is saying only Dalits could not partake in this occupational mobility. Yes, Anand, but Ambedkar says that's not the case. Only Dalits could not partake in this occupational mobility, but she says that Dalits forever have not been able to partake in this occupational mobility. But then, how can Ambedkar then say that today's Dalits were not Dalits of those days? Whoever were the Dalits of those days, probably they didn't partake in these actions, in these occupational mobility actions, okay? But their descendants probably were not Dalits anymore. Or people who were not Dalits back then later became Dalits, according to Ambedkar. Is definition of Dalits kind of vague? It's everyone, including all the SCs and STs, right? They are all Dalits, right? So by that definition, let's say whoever was scheduled castes and scheduled tribes of those days, they did not take part in these economically upwardly mobile activities, which is not very accurate. There were different scheduled castes who were involved.
Statements of the Dharma Shastras were taken by historians not only as norms, but on occasion as suggestive of how Hindu society actually functioned. Much of the discussion, therefore, came to be centered on the belief and practices of the upper castes. The religious practices of the lower castes, the sources for which were different, were often treated as ethnography, and these did not feature in most definitions of Hinduism until recent years. The Varnashram Dharma of the Dharma Shastras, observing the rules of caste actions and rituals, embodied caste conservatism. However, new observances needed to be incorporated as and when required, although often maintaining that the format was still being observed. The Brahmins, in performing rituals and in the pursuit of learning, claimed the highest status with maximum purity. This, they stated, required them to be distanced from other castes and also to establish a segregated group, permanent.
Similar to how an academic operates today, how an academic's life, tenure, housing complex, I think operates today.
Excluded and treated as maximally impure, therefore untouchable. The purity of the Brahman, as it has been said, had its counterweight in the impurity of the untouchable Dalit. Yet the same Vedic society that discriminated against the Dasas as the inferior other did on occasion recruit the Dasi Putraha Brahmins, the sons of low caste Dasis, to the Brahman category and treat them with respect.
See, what is RSS Ki Dalli saying?
As the inferior other did on occasion recruit the Dasi Putraha Brahmins, the sons of low caste Dasis, into the Brahman category and treat them with respect. From the late first millennium AD, the power of the Brahmins increased enormously. Large numbers of them received sizable amounts of land donated to them as fees for performing rituals of legitimation or averting the evil effects of an eclipse. In newly opened areas, such donis became landowners. A new Brahma Kshatriya caste became prominent in association with these donis. The logic of the emergence of such a caste is self-evident. The caste of Kayasth scribes, who virtually monopolized administration in northern India, were interestingly given a Brahman Shudra.
So the IAS Babus of those days.
who virtually monopolized administration in northern India were interestingly given a Brahman-Shudra origin. They performed, in fact, many Brahmanical activities other than conducting rituals. Rereading Weber on Indian religion has once again underlined some earlier questions in my mind. For Weber, the unifying feature of Hinduism was the theodicy of karma and sansar, actions in this earth leading to rebirth and particular kinds of rebirth in the next life. How central this was to all Hindus of every caste remains debatable. Heroes aspire to go to heaven, taken there
It remains debatable. It remains debatable.
by apsaras, celestial maidens, debatable. How central this was to all Hindus of every caste remains debatable. Heroes aspire to go to heaven, taken there by apsaras, celestial maidens. The Shramana theodicies were naturally not identical to the Brahman. To pursue the theodicies of sect and caste might be more revealing than generalizing about Hinduism as a whole. A frequently discussed subject was renunciation. Some have argued that renunciation among both Hindus and Buddhists was life-denying. However, unlike asceticism, renunciation does not remove the person from society. It sets up an alternate society that the renouncer can join. Renouncers were not attempting a social revolution, but were providing an alternative way of life. Hinduism as a religion had a history of change, with perhaps a wider range of new forms than in other religions. This is perhaps one of the reasons why it is regarded as extremely complex. Vedic Brahmanism is taken as a start subsequent to the Harappan, historically. Its imprint has been viewed as continuous, but mainly for the Brahman. Its authority was challenged by the Shramana religions, such as Buddhism, Jainism, and the Ajivakas. Dharma, translated as religion, came to be described as consisting of two streams, the Brahman and the Shraman. The former was largely Vedic Brahmanism, based on the sanctity of the Vedas, belief in deities, the immortality of the soul, and the performance of sacrificial rituals. The Shramanas denied this, drawing upon reason, causality, and other factors. They were dismissed by the Brahmins as Nastika, non-believers. The relationship between the two, according to the grammarian Patanjali, is said to have been comparable to that of the snake and the mongoose, without mentioning which was which. This duality and its interaction is continuously referred to in historical sources. Its juxtaposition was central to the idea of dharma. Yet, few historians of Hinduism have investigated it as a duality. The link with caste would be clearer if we were to work out the caste differentiation of the sects individually rather than Hinduism as a whole. It would also force us.
Did you all hear this? This was nice.
The link with caste would be clearer if we were to work out the caste differentiation of the sects individually rather than Hinduism as a whole. It would also force us not to see Hinduism as a single monolithic religion. The interface between Brahmins and Shramans would most likely prove insightful. Vedic Brahmanism was a religion of that caste. The majority followed variant forms of Hinduism in what is now referred to and differentiated from Vedic Brahmanism as Puranic Hinduism. Shiva and Vishnu superseded the earlier deities, were iconized and placed for the first time in temples, and worship took the form of puja, simple offerings instead of elaborate sacrificial rituals. New deities regularly entered the pantheon, and the sects worshipping them had to be accommodated in the caste hierarchy. The latest, I think, was in the last century, Santoshi Ma. Because
How does this religion create orthodox people? If someone's not orthodox, maybe they won't be able to carry out the tradition themselves. But look at the general direction of this society. Look at the general vibe of this society. There's not much room for orthodoxiness, really.
because of these changes, the Dharmashastras of the second millennium AD had to then discuss burning questions, such as evaluating the status of the temple priest vis-a-vis that of the Veda-knowing Brahman. Together with this was a parallel phenomenon of Bhakti and Shakta teachers, which Weber refers to, founding many more new sects, spanning a range of variant beliefs. Communities could choose whom to worship and how. And in this context, the coming of Islam increased the number of sects and the range of religious ideas. Some sects disapproved of caste altogether, like the Kabirpanthis. Others became castes, like the Lingayats. And many of these sects conformed neither to Islam nor to Hinduism. They tended to have fuzzy edges and some blurred overlaps. The next mutation in the religion came, or the religions as some prefer to call it, came in the 19th century in the various samajas of the upper caste middle class. They accepted the colonial interpretation of Indian society and adopted ways of adjusting Hindu belief and practice to the processes of modernization. Reforms were an effort to standardize the religion, but the upper caste remained in authority. It was a concession to the colonial definition of Hinduism as a monolithic religion rather than a range of religious sects. The new authority of the
तो देखो घपला ब्रिटिश ने थोड़ा कर दिया. Even Romila Thapar is pointing it out.
The upper caste had its counterpoint, however, in the surfacing of a variety of anti-Brahman movements as reform movements. Historically, Hinduism seems to have been consistently a duality, starting with the contradiction between the Brahman and the Shraman. Attempts to conform to the format required legitimizing these changes. Weber's study of legitimacy has been helpful in understanding this process. We have begun to recognize the forms it took and why. Social conformity was important to patronage. One form of claiming royal status.
देखो देखो निनर कहाँ तक पहुंच गया. 3-4 स्टेप जंप करके पूरा पहुंच गया है आर्गुमेंट पे. Yeah, that is one way of saying it. I absolutely agree. मगर ऐसा है नहीं. In the minds of the specific individual orthodox people, they don't consider it that way. We are maybe trying to conserve this ever-changing nature.
Was through genealogies. Birth established caste identity, and some genealogical evidence was required for claims to status. The late first millennium AD saw what
Genealogies which were being faked. किसी भी बाबू के बदले में ब्राह्मण के पास जाके अटेस्टेड करवा ले रहे थे. Anytime someone got richer.
the Purans call the making of new Kshatriya castes. The Brahmin authors of the Purans maintained that most of the earlier dynasties had been Shudra or of low Mlech origin. The social codes preferred that rulers should be Kshatriyas. So many post-Gupta rulers claimed Kshatriya status irrespective of their original caste. Vedic rituals became increasingly symbolic. The Kshatriya ruler preferred supporting new rituals, such as being reborn.
देखो भाई, हमारे पे इतना नॉन एकेडमिकली बैक्ड आर्ग्यूमेंट्स ही मेजरली मोस्ट कॉमनप्लेसली आते हैं राइट विंगर्स के ऊपर कि वो घटिया आर्ग्यूमेंट का काउंटर देते देते ही हमारा आधा समय बर्बाद हो जाता है. मेनली राइट विंग अमंग लेट्स से टॉप 5 आर्ग्यूमेंट्स ऑफ द राइट विंग टुडे, टॉप 5 लेट्स से फक यूज ऑफ द राइट विंग टू द लेफ्ट विंग टुडे. One of those 5 things will probably be that no, you see, you all hate India and Hinduism for caste so much, caste birth-based hierarchies, rigidity, etc. नहीं भाई, there was so much mobility. मोबिलिटी के लिए हम गरुड़ प्रकाशन के बुक्स निकालते हैं, आरएसएस के बुक्स निकालते हैं, थोड़ा हितेश रंजन सन्नाल निकाल सकते हैं, अंकुर गुप्ता तो है भी, मगर ये रोमिला थापर बैठ के भी एग्जाम्पल के बाद एग्जाम्पल के बाद एग्जाम्पल दिए जा रही है कि देखो मोबिलिटी था कास्ट में. तो मोबिलिटी नहीं है, तुम चूतिए हो. ये आर्गुमेंट सिर्फ एकेडमिया के बाहर हमारे लिए है, अंदर ये लोग नहीं मानते हैं कि मोबिलिटी नहीं था. And I have confirmed this with so many sociology undergrads, PhD students and master's students. Up until, I think, undergrads and to some extent master's courses in non-elite institutions like Calcutta University Sociology and all, those places, it's pretty much taught that way. Although the head of sociology in Calcutta University, a legendary professor, very old, called Professor Dr. Bula Bhadro, she's also very famous in sociology circles for writing a legendary paper against Marx's understanding of India on these very same lines. Okay, they are Marxists who hate Marx for his views on India, by the way. So,
from a golden womb in order to claim status. Elaborate genealogies had to be fabricated, linking these families through a myth with the Kshatriya clans.
This is Hitesh Ranjan Sannal's research, okay?
The epics. A section in the inscriptions called Prashastis, eulogies of the dynasty and king, provided the approved caste origin and indicate one process of legitimation.
And when you read these kinds of ancient documents and texts, you will end up thinking that, okay, see, it was such a king-dependent society. हर वक्त पूरा सुबह से रात लोग सिर्फ राजा की स्तुति गाते थे और हो जाता था दिन का काम. नहीं भाई, it was अभी नित्य कर्म करना है, भगवान के लिए इतने स्तुति गाने हैं, तो भाई राजा 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 कब करे? टाइम कितना है हमारे हाथ में? Neon is saying, why are our academics hypocritical? Do they want to seem agreeable with the masses because they are too afraid to offend them, even if it comes at the cost of the truth? Neon, a bit, yeah, 50% is that, and 50% is they kind of want the majoritarians to be a little oppressed. They believe otherwise we will just run amok. Here to learn is saying Ashish Dhar is being counterproductive by saying that there is no doubt that Varna is equal to Jati. Varna is equal to Jati and caste has to be birth based. I have his argument of caste having to be birth based. It's kind of addressed towards people who want to be orthodox, etc. So I don't care all that much. He does leave some room for people who don't want to, let's say, buy into this. If you buy into this, then you have to believe in birth based caste. That's his view. I don't have a problem with that view because he's not saying that you necessarily have to believe in this view. But Varna is equal to Jati is just plain wrong. Let's see what Varun Dev is saying. Dada, you have to understand that centuries of invasion and brutal rulers will take its toll. And this is in context of people becoming orthodox. I don't think people have become orthodox just because of colonial rule. This is because of this is not because of the desperation and the sadness and frustration of having lived under colonial rule. This is the emulation of colonial rule. Most Hindus today are Christians in, let's say, theologically, philosophically speaking. They understand Hinduism the way to understand Christianity. That's the problem.
Controlling this process gave the Brahmins increased and fresh power. Were the social codes ever actually treated as the blueprint for the entire society and recommended for all times? This becomes rather complicated given that caste was not irrelevant to the other religions of the subcontinent, which of course is an aspect of caste that is not discussed by many. Caste was recognized among conversions to Islam and Christianity. Catholic Brahmins to this day are particular about their status in Goa, and Sayyid Muslims keep their distance from the Julahas.
Oh shit! भाई, अरे ये कोई लोग सुनते क्यों नहीं है? Right wing तो Romila Thapar को legit नहीं सुनता है with some basis at least. Why doesn't the left listen to Romila Thapar? What is she saying? Why don't libertarians listen to Romila Thapar? Two significant points. ब्राह्मण कैथोलिक्स का स्टेटस मैक्स वेबर का ही आइडिया है. स्टेटस इंपॉर्टेंट भी बोल दिया आरएसएस की दिल्ली ने. और फिर सैयद और जुलाहज, अजलाफ, अर्जाल्स, पसमंदाज
about their status in Goa, and Christianity. Catholic Brahmins to this day are particular about their status in Goa, and Sayyid Muslims keep their distance from the Julahas.
Oh shit.
Claims to purity were replaced by claims to origins.
Oh.
Caste status, especially if low, was carried over into the new religion.
Yes.
For the Dalits.
Yes. There's a beautiful paper sent to me by Mystery Sociologist about 500 years back, which I have not discussed as of now, and I will someday. It talks about the Sayyadization of Turkey. Okay, random people up and about suddenly claiming that we are descendants of Sayyids from Saudi Arabia. Okay, and then the Rajputs of Rajasthan, they all of a sudden entered the Kshatriya fold, etc. Okay, when they were not, they were outside the caste pantheon, etc. And they were simply tribals.
There was virtually no change, given that Islam, Christianity, and Sikhism all maintain a strict exclusion. And I think that this is a telling comment on caste and religion. The genealogical fantasy of caste in one situation contrasts with its continuing reality in the other.
Genealogical fantasy.
I would like to conclude by suggesting that Weber's arguments may have been purposefully comparative had he worked on a detailed study of the same approximate time period in India as in Europe. Capitalism is a modern phenomenon, and the focus could well have been on the second half of the second millennium. This would have been prior to the possible rise of industrial capitalism or to a Protestant-type ethic. If the link is to be investigated elsewhere other than in Europe, both the type of economy and the religious ethic and their causal relationship would have to be interrogated.
Yes.
An alternative.
Exactly. भाई इसे कहते हैं सोशियोलॉजी, हिस्टोरिकल सोशियोलॉजी. इसे कहते हैं हिस्ट्री राइटिंग. इसके लिए इन लोगों को फंड किया जाता है, ऐसे सोचने के लिए. ऐसा सोचना तो मार्केट बेस्ड सिस्टम में पॉसिबल नहीं है. Some people, I think, legitimately have to be insulated from the market, like theoretical physics and stuff. This is the theoretical physics of social science. क्या brilliant एक एनालिसिस हुआ यहाँ पे लास्ट 1 मिनट में. देखो कि मैक्स वेबर कहाँ पे एग्जैक्टली गलत है. She is not saying यहाँ कि भोसड़ी वाले white racist था इसलिए ब्राउन लोगों को गांडू समझ के ये सब बोल दिया. This is legitimate criticism. This is so beautifully put.
Period in India as in Europe. Capitalism is a modern phenomenon, and the focus could well have been on the second half of the second millennium. This would have been prior to the possible rise of industrial capitalism or to a Protestant-type ethic. If the link is to be investigated elsewhere other than in Europe, both the type of economy and the religious ethic and their causal relationship would have to be interrogated. An alternative question could be that if both conditions were present, then would such a change be inevitable? If it still didn't happen, then a further possible question is whether capitalism in India was diverted by colonialism. I'm also a little mystified that in his search
Holy shit. Did capitalism get diverted in India because of colonialism? Meanwhile, commies and Hindutva socialists claim that capitalism is evil, colonialism is evil, colonial capitalism is evil. That's the only way of doing capitalism. Although they would probably, if push came to shove, they would call it extractive capitalism. But anyway, they do equate capitalism with the way East India Company did things, which is why the elderly generation of the RSS brass absolutely hates capitalism for these very reasons. Okay, so and she's opposing even, she's countering them, even the RSS Hindutvatis and the commies. All her diehard fans exactly say these things, and she's saying colonialism fucked India and deprived India of capitalism.
Would have to be interrogated. An alternative question could be that if both conditions were present, then would such a change be inevitable? If it still didn't happen, then a further possible question is whether capitalism in India was diverted by colonialism. I'm also a little mystified that in his search for rationality in the Indian tradition, Weber mentions, but only in passing, Indian thought on logic, mathematics, linguistics, astronomy, medicine. These were areas of Brahmanical, Buddhist, Islamic interaction. The leading centers were in Asia, with much exchange between Arab, Indian, and Chinese scholars, with the Arab scholars familiar with Greek scholarship. This continued until the 15th century or so. Given the similarity of investigations in Europe and Asia, what prevented Asia from taking...
She is not fully correct. She's 90% correct. The extra point I would add is that not just... it wasn't just the Chinese scholars or the Arab scholars who were... No, she actually mentioned Arab scholars who were familiar with Greek scholars. Even Indian scholars were familiar with Greek works.
The particular
Hindu scholars.
Knowledge investigations in Europe and Asia. What prevented Asia from taking the particular leap in knowledge taken by Europe at that time?
Exactly, भाई ये तो भाई हमको लिबर्टेरियंस को पॉइंट आउट करना है कि हाँ भाई वो तो कैप्टिव मार्केट हो गया, फिर मोनोपोली, कोई अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं है, मार्केट से तो इंसुलेटेड हो ही गया क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट चला रहा है, तो वो कैसे फ्री मार्केट हुआ? And Romila Thapar is saying exactly that here. What the fuck of horseshoe is this?
Investigations in Europe and Asia. What prevented Asia from taking the particular leap in knowledge taken by Europe at that time? This, it seems to me, is an interesting question.
I have an answer to that interesting question for which my head might get chopped off. It is an interesting question. The answer is dangerous.
And Chinese scholars, with the Arab scholars familiar with Greek scholarship. This continued until the 15th century or so. Given the similarity of investigations in Europe and Asia, what prevented Asia from taking the particular leap in knowledge taken by Europe at that time? This, it seems to me, is an interesting question, and surely more was required than the Protestant ethic. A focus on investigating the immediately pre-colonial period would perhaps have enabled Weber to study more precisely the facets that he was drawing on.
Yeah.
Were there elements of capitalism that might have been present, a subject that is central to other debates on the transition to capitalism? Did colonialism obstruct the emergence of industrial capitalism? And what held back the strands of a Protestant-type ethic from becoming more visible and active if it existed? This may have provided a more precise background to ascertaining the degree to which there could have been a Protestant ethic, as for instance amongst the Jains, who, according to Weber, had a potential. Or it might also have revealed significant variance in the Indian situation, pointing to alternative ways to the capitalist path. Every society, after all, does not think and act in an identical way. The problem with theories of explanation...
Okay, थोड़ा सनातन इकोनॉमिक्स का भी उनके लिए भी थोड़ा डिफेंस दे दिया. वाह वाह वाह. She is playing to the gallery here.
After all, does not think and act in an identical way. The problem with theories of explanation in the social sciences is that they are shaped by the times in which they are formulated. As more data flows in, the formulations change. But the significant ones do provide leads to analyzing the new data, even sometimes in the light of the old. Some of Weber's theories may now be set aside. However, whilst assessing them, new ideas have surfaced. And certainly that has been my experience. And the leads that he provided us with can be useful as initial questions in current research. By way of speculation, May I end?
Like the question of whether castes are classes or status groups or not, or simply a distinctly, uniquely Indian thing.
By suggesting that one could ask that if Weber was writing in 2016 instead of 1916, how would he have seen the religion of India? Thank you.
Great stuff. Anybody, members, want to join the live chat, this discussion about this speech? They can. The joining link has been given in the community tab, that in a members only post. And others, you all can keep on going on with the discussion in the live chat. I will keep looking at that as well. Others can join the live chat. Let me see what's going on. Which Varun Devi Singh, the dangerous answer type karo comment mein, we want to know the answer. नहीं ये गलती हम ना करेंगे, आज नहीं करेंगे, कभी ना कभी कर देंगे शायद. Anand is saying we were the ones who first emigrated to West Asia and the Mediterranean. Bharatiyas were trading with most of the world long before the Arabs and Greeks came to Bharat. Were they? Probably, yeah. Was pre-Islamic Arabia doing any trading, Anand? You are muted, okay?
एक minute. I'll turn off my audio here. I'll put it here. Give me a second. Oh my God. एक minute. Okay. I'll turn off my audio here. I'll put it. Are you getting an echo? Oh my God.
The quality is a little bad. Yeah, there's huge echo as well. Varun Devi Singh, Dada, do you think JSG Kushal know these views of Romila?
Okay, just talk to me.
If yes, then why not? Yeah. Then why not talk about it? No. If no, then it's surprisingly weird they criticize her so much. Varun Dev, I don't think they know these. I don't think they know these views of Romila Thapar. If so, they also probably believe that unless you criticize casteism and castistes the way they do, casteism won't die down. And frankly, showing off is a subconscious action some of the times, and it's not a subconscious, it's a conscious deliberate action some of the times. So I don't think they are immune from the petty intention of simply coming across as a fiercely anti-casteism guy, the virtue signal essentially. So for those reasons, subconsciously they might really be the ones, might be going on with this age-old Dumontian view of caste. Hi Anand. Yeah, do you think, Anand, pre-Islamic Arabia, I can't remember exactly, pre-Islamic Arabia, did they have much trade?
No, there are lots of trade. So pre-Islamic Arabia basically is the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Akkadians, right? So we have they were trading with multiple groups. They were conquering and trading, but they were trading. And the lot of Indian artifacts or artifacts made in the IVC or even other parts of India, they are found all over that region. So we definitely were, and they didn't live here. We lived there. So a lot of the there's a new one, the Odd Compass. I follow him quite a bit. He does a breakdown of this. There are a lot of Indian artifacts in the most of in Egypt and Arabia and parts of Sumeria and stuff.
Yeah.
So my point,
the main question is, question is, what do you think of Romila Thapar's speech here?
No, so I am a little bit torn because I don't think she's coming from a libertarian perspective. She's coming from a
of course.
She's saying that the Brahminical society is fundamentally extractive from the population. But she's saying because they were able to gaslight the population enough, the rest of the population decided to use that as their method to go up the, what do you call it, reputational hierarchy ladder. That she's very clearly saying. She's also saying that only one group, like I mentioned in the chat, is that only one group has completely not been able to get the benefit of changing occupation. You know, she's occupational caste again and again. She never says birth-based caste. You notice? Not once. She only says one group has not been able to break the ceiling of occupational caste. And that's the Dalits. So her framing is very clear. All other communities come in class warfare. The Dalits are outside of it. You see what's happening? That's one thing. The second thing she's so for a lot of things she says are factually true, right? That the guilds use their influence to buy power from the king, saying we give you this for if you go and conquer this region and stuff, right? That's very clear, and that's anthropologically true around the world. The problem is she will not say this. She will not admit that anthropologically around the world, guilds are the best way to bring people together. So, for example, you like a gang of us, we are interested in certain topics, right? We might sit together and start writing papers on it. We become a guild because we become specialized in that thing. Someone will come and give us money for, okay, you're writing these papers, you're discussing these topics, you're a new guild. Now, if we are not going to hang out with any other group and you're only going to focus on our work, over time, our families may intermingle. And because our families intermingle and we have specialization in a particular topic, and other people are not specialized in the topic, we are like, okay, let's keep our resources together. Why should we bring another random person who may or may not succeed? So it dilutes our economic benefit. So we become a caste group. So essentially what she's saying is this how, and then basically imagine tomorrow if my guild is not very worthwhile in the king's eyes, I may change my occupation saying, okay, I'm not this anymore. Because this is respected more, this is not respected anymore. So that their occupational hierarchy changes, which is admitting as well.
Yeah.
I don't think this is libertarian. Yeah. I think she's talking about in terms of collectivism. She's saying people can collectivize the Indian way. And that's against capitalism. Capitalism says what? I am not going to cultivate. I'm going to have independent money. Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, what she means and intends are different things, but her arguments are absolutely libertarian critiques of Sanatan economics, because she goes on pointing out that India was not centralized. That's one of the biggest, I think, debates and most significant points of contention between the free market people and the Hindutva socialists of today.
I think Hindutva socialists are not looking for centralization. They're looking for, they are, sorry, my bad. They are looking for centralization, but not in economics. I think they are more in the vein of the American socialists. So, for example, I forgot this guy's name. Wolf.
What do you think are their views on economics? Because that's pretty centralized as well, right?
I think they are more like a collectivist vision, not centralized. So, communism is centralized. They are like collectivists. They're saying we will go back to the old, what do you call it? Not Gurukul. What's that thing? I think they all get together and they have like communes, but what kind? The Indian commune. What is the Indian commune? They used to have an ashrama system where you have large groups of large regions where large people come together and they share their resources, but don't make it their own. So what does capitalism say? Private property. You don't share your goods. So if I'm going to I'm a cobbler and I make lots of shoes, I'm like, you pay me for the shoe. You don't demand that I make shoes for everyone. So a Sanatani economist may say, oh, because you are contributing to the dharmic resource of the group, you make shoes for everyone. Or someone is a Brahmin, he should provide support to all the people. Don't look for any money for yourself.
Is this Sanatana economics the way you understand it, or do you think this is what Ankit Shah and his supporters are saying?
Ankit Shah, I don't follow Ankit Shah.
He is the face of Sanatana economics. He's the one who has coined the term. People who critique us from the Sanatana economics side are his fans who say that libertarianism, free markets are all Western propaganda, etc. Because the points on which they criticize us, on those points, they seem to be here face to face with Romila Thapar as well. Because of their historical justifications of socialism.
What are they saying then? What is their contention? What is their contention then? In
government, dharmic prime minister who will do good things, and we will just have faith in him because he uses a lot of
words. How will that happen? See, I need specifics.
We will elect them.
We will
elect a true dharmic guy.
How will you elect? What is the criteria for election? Like everyone have vote?
No, all of them are huge fans of Narendra Modi already. So someone like Narendra Modi again.
No, again, what, priest king?
Yeah, more priest kings.
Or will they be naturally chosen? Like they just happen to have a lot of popularity and they'll be chosen. Or will they be a system where they will assess the person's dharmic value? That's my question. Have they said how they'll assess dharmic value?
I know how they will. They might come up with a bunch of bullshit answers, but I know how they will. They won't.
How?
They shouldn't be wearing black t-shirts. They must be using a lot of Sanskrit. They must hate America in every 5 sentences. That's how they'll prove their dharmic credentials.
How is it dharmic though?
Hold your thoughts. Anand,
Sure.
Aryan Invader also has some views on this particular topic only, and then we'll have a discussion. Yeah, Aryan Invader, go ahead, make your points.
नमस्कार दादा.
Yeah. Hi.
रिगार्डिंग धार्मिक पर्सन, बात ये है कि धार्मिक व्यक्ति के लिए धार्मिक रहने का इंसेंटिव है हमारे सिस्टम में. दैट्स द पॉइंट. तो इंसेंटिव ही नहीं है हमारे सिस्टम में, तो धार्मिक कौन रहेगा? अधार्मिक भी अधार्मिक बन जाएगा.
तो काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट यहाँ पे ये है, Aryan Invader. Should I use your name, Aryan Invader? I know who you are. Are you uncomfortable with that?
You can use my name. I am just having fun.
Okay. ये सिर्फ मजाक के लिए. हाँ, ठीक है. तो अब ये धार्मिक, sorry, what was the thing I was going to respond to?
वो धार्मिक लीडर का इंसेंटिव ही नहीं है धार्मिक रहने का.
They would say that अगर इंसेंटिव चाहिए धर्म प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए, ये तो कैसा धार्मिक बनेगा रे तू? जब हमारे एंसेस्टर्स भाग रहे थे आइडल्स अपने मतलब बगल के नीचे लाके, तब उनके पास क्या इंसेंटिव था? तो तुमको क्यों इंसेंटिव चाहिए? बोलो, क्या करोगे इंसेंटिव का? इंसेंटिव नहीं है तो नहीं है. इंसेंटिव वेस्टर्न प्रोपेगेंडा है. तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक ऑफ दिस? या गो अहेड. या
नहीं, इंसेंटिव वेस्टर्न प्रोपेगेंडा है. अच्छा, ये अब इस पे क्या बोल सकते हैं कोई? मैं सोच के पागल हो रहा हूँ कि
या आनंद, you can also come back. Yeah, I'll mute myself.
Yeah, Anand can also come.
No, specifically, what is the question? I'm reading the chat also. I'm a little distracted. Sorry.
Is Romila Thapar's words today, what we heard her here, are they criticisms of Sanatan economics or not?
I don't think she cares. I don't think she realizes Ankit Shah exists.
Of course she does. But implicitly, are those arguments valuable in that context or not?
No, so they're not directly critical of this concept of centralization, but they are definitely more evidence to show that in Hindu society has always figured out how to decentralize and govern itself without centralization. It is always known, right? And she clearly lays out that it is clearly changed since the British arrived, and there I agree with her. Even during the Mughal times, Hindus knew how to build institutions of their own, and they were highly urbanized. I think they said this earlier in the beginning. The rapid deurbanization of India happened post the British because they destroyed industry. What did the Mughals do? Mughals is extracted from industry. It means this took all the money.
All the flourishing princely states were also, their backs were broken by the British. And Irfan Habib himself mentions that the Mughal kings were parasites who did not let capitalism flourish in India.
No, I don't think so. They were to prevent capitalism from flourishing. I think they were parasites that took advantage of the capital. So, for example, they were like that's why Islamists and socialists like each other so much, because fundamentally they think the same way. They require capitalism to be functioning well. Then they attach themselves like suckers and suck all the blood out of their capitalist state, which is what the Mughals were doing. They were finding an extremely successful local capitalist society, and they sucked out the blood by extracting large amounts of taxation. Which I think even Kushal, I don't bring up Kushal here, but even Kushal was having this discussion with Abhas Maldea, and they find out that the taxation by the Mughals was more than the British. They took like almost 3 times the amount of taxes from the landowners than the British. Even the British did. What distinguishes between the Mughal and the British is the Mughals didn't destroy local industry. They were like leeches. The British they just burnt everything down. Like burnt everything and say, we will build it. You locals, you die. You kill your industry. So it's a little different, right? They wanted only the resources. They wanted the raw materials. And they pushed a lot of people into farming. So when you push everyone into farming, there's limited resource. Land is a limited resource. And skills in farming are new. Like people have to learn how to farm or suddenly out of nowhere, right? And you don't have your guild support anymore. The guild support you don't have anymore. So you basically become poor overnight, right? And then what happens then? Then you organize it to your family groups. Think about it. There's no incentive to organize the family groups when you have a thriving industry. The minute it breaks down suddenly, you're like, the only protection I have is my family group and the wealth that they have kept together. So I will try even more to keep other people out of my groups. So I will get more fragmented into endogamic groups. So to me, that was definitely one thing that caused increased endogamy in India. My opinion. I'm not highly researched on this topic, but that's my opinion.
Right. Okay. Now my question to Abhay. What did you think of this this interview, this speech by Romila Thapar? And if you wanted to add something else, go ahead.
Regarding that dharmic king, I have one question that कि आप धार्मिक किंग को चुन के उससे करवाएंगे क्या यदि उसको सिस्टम्स सुधारने के लिए आप नहीं ला रहे हैं? क्योंकि जो धार्मिक होता है उसका काम होता है न्याय करना, ठीक है? न्याय इज अ सिस्टम. आप न्याय ऐसे ही नहीं कर देते ना, आप उसका एक सिस्टम बैठाते हैं न्याय करने. तो मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि आदमी को हाँ फ्रेमवर्क होता है. तो आप बोल रहे कि धार्मिक व्यक्ति को बैठाओ पर सिस्टम मत बदलो, तो उस धार्मिक व्यक्ति का फायदा क्या है? दैट वाज माय पॉइंट.
नहीं, वो लोग तो बोलेंगे कि सिस्टम भी तो बदलना है, रिपब्लिक 2.0 होगा, नया कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आ जाएगा, वहां पे सिर्फ धार्मिक हो जाएगा सब कुछ. तो
नहीं, तो
इकोनॉमिक्स
वहीं पे
वैसे ही
हम
चलेगा,
लोगों
तो धार्मिक
वहीं
वाइब्स
पे
है ना.
हम लोगों को घुस के बोलना चाहिए कि नहीं, हम लोग अपने हिसाब से धर्म तय करेंगे, मतलब हमारा जो धार्मिक विजन है हम वो रखें. और दूसरी बात जो आपने रोमिला थापड़ की बात की, तो कुछ पॉइंट्स है मेरे पास कि एक तो है कि ये लोग कितने बड़े दोगले हैं, ये आज मुझे समझ में आया कि एकेडेमिया में कुछ बोलते हैं और बाहर आके कुछ बोलते हैं. अब मुझे लगता है कि बीजेपी को ये सब वीडियोस पकड़ना चाहिए और एकदम फैला देना चाहिए सब जगह.
भाई ये कितने साल से तुमको पता नहीं, कितने सारे सोशल साइंटिस्ट ने बीजेपी को, आरएसएस को ये सब बोला है लास्ट 5-6 2015-16 से. तो किन लोगों ने किनको क्या क्या बोला है वो मुझे ही पता है. तो बीजेपी के पास ये न्यूज बहुत लोगों ने पहुंचाने की कोशिश की है, उनको नहीं चाहिए, क्योंकि हर स्टोरी में एक विलन चाहिए. अब अगर विलन है इरफान हबीब, रोमिला थापर, एंड आई एम अपोज टू रोमिला थापर एंड इरफान हबीब, एंड यू गाइस टेक साइड्स, पिक साइड्स. तो अब साइड पिक कर लिया है रोमिला थापर इरफान हबीब के अगेंस्ट में. अब उनको काम नहीं लगाएंगे उनके आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, उनको डिस्ट्रॉय भी नहीं कर पाएंगे उनके, क्योंकि उनके मतलब कॉम्पिटिटर्स तो नहीं उभर के आ रहे, एकेडेमिया से तो नहीं आ रहे. तो अब हम बैठे रहे उनको ना सुन के, क्योंकि बीजेपी को चाहिए एनिमी मिल गया है इरफान हबीब और रोमिला थापर में.
ये लोग आइडियोलॉजी को एनिमी नहीं बना रहे, ये लोग लोगों को एनिमी बना रहे. सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम ये है. और लोगों को एनिमी बना के अपने लोगों को कन्विंस करना आसान है, ना कि आइडियोलॉजी को. इसीलिए आप देखते हैं एक पर्टिकुलर आइडियोलॉजी जो सर काटने की बात करती है लोगों की, वो उस पर वो नहीं बोलते, लोगों पर बोलते. अनदर पॉइंट इज कि उन्होंने गिल्ड्स के बारे में बात की. आपने संजीव सन्याल के कुछ पॉडकास्ट देखे अभी पिछले कुछ दिनों से कर रहे हैं? वो बात कर रहे थे कि इंडिया में डेलॉइट और ये सब जो कंसल्टेंसी और ऑडिटिंग कंपनीज नहीं बने जो ग्लोबल लेवल के, उसका कारण क्या है? एक तो ब्यूरोक्रेसी तो बात होती ही है. उन्होंने कहा था प्रोफेशनल बॉडीज जैसे बार काउंसिल या सीए का जो प्रोफेशनल बॉडी है, वो बोले कि इनका गिल्ड्स बना हुआ है, ये लोग मिलकर एक कंपनी सेटअप नहीं कर सकते. जैसे कोई लॉ कंपनी बनेगा उसमें सीए पार्टनर नहीं हो सकता. इनफैक्ट बार एसोसिएशन के लॉज इतने कठोर है कि सीए उसमें जॉब भी नहीं ले सकता, मतलब उसमें जा ही नहीं सकता, उसमें खाली लॉयर्स काम करेंगे. तो जो मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच होता है कि सीए भी चाहिए, आईटी के लोग भी चाहिए, इंजीनियर भी चाहिए, सब मिल करके ऐसा कंसल्टेंसी कंपनी बनाते हैं, जैसे डेलॉइट में सब काम करते हैं. मैं जस्ट एग्जांपल के लिए बोल रहा हूँ. तो उसके कारण भारत में ये बन नहीं पाते ऐसे कंसल्टेंसी ग्रुप्स. इनफैक्ट हमारे यहाँ फॉरेन कंसल्टेंसी ग्रुप्स को फ्रीडम दे देंगे पर अपने लोगों को फ्रीडम नहीं देंगे. ऐसा
देखो, ये पूरा का पूरा एग्जैक्ट
तो
एंशिएंट इंडिया की तरह ही है ना, कि
यही
जो आउटसाइडर होगा उनको थोड़ा हायर कास्ट भी दे देंगे, मगर यहाँ पे जो सिस्टम अपने लिए बना रखे हैं वो थोड़ा रह ही जाएगा एज लॉन्ग एज पॉसिबल। तो यहाँ पे भी कास्ट इंटरेस्ट ही प्रोटेक्ट हो रहा है, वो अपना खुद कास्ट बन गए हैं और उनके बेटे बेटियां भी अपने लोगों में ही शादी भी करते होंगे। ये पूरा का पूरा एंडोगेमस स्टेटस ग्रुप बन गया है वो सब प्रोफेशंस।
हाँ वही। तो मैं देख रहा था ये जो प्रोफेशनल बॉडीज है जैसे बार काउंसिल, मैं तो कोर्ट्स के जजेस को भी एक कास्ट मानता हूँ। अपने ही लोगों को प्रमोट करते हैं, अपने ही बेटों को
हाँ
या
एब्सोल्युटली एब्सोल्युटली,
भतीजों
वो
को
तो बर्थ
भाइयों
बेस्ड
को
भी है,
करते, वो
वो
तो
तो
बर्थ
बर्थ बेस्ड
बेस्ड है।
कास्टिज्म ही है।
तो मुझे तो जो बोला जाता है गिल्ड्स को लेकर वो यही हो रहा है, और संजीव सन्याल ने इसीलिए कहा था कि अभी ये मिडिवल स्टाइल गिल्ड सिस्टम नहीं चलेगा। उन्होंने बोला था ये प्रोफेशनल बॉडीज को अपने रूल्स चेंज करने पड़ेंगे। तो ये मुझे एक इंटरेस्टिंग कनेक्शन मिला इस डिस्कशन से, मतलब इस जो स्पीच दिया रोमिला थापर जी ने, तो ये मुझे एक अच्छा लगा। और सबसे बड़ी बात तो जो बात हो ही रही थी, जो राइट विंग भी कह रहे थे कि वी आर वेरी, एज अ सोसाइटी वी वर वेरी कंफर्टेबल विद ट्रेड। हमें कभी भी ट्रेड को लेकर समस्या नहीं थी। और हम जानते हैं ऐतिहासिक रूप से कि जब दो राजाओं के बीच में युद्ध होता था तो प्रजा को बीच में ना लाना पड़े ऐसे नीतियां बनाई जाती थी राजाओं द्वारा। और प्रजा को भी कोई अंतर नहीं पड़ता था कि राजा बदल गया, नया वंश आ गया, उतना अंतर नहीं पड़ता था अनलेस राजा बहुत ज्यादा ऑप्रेसिव ना हो। जैसे राजा धनानंद, जो नंद डायनेस्टी थी बिफोर
यस
मौर्य, तो चाणक्य आकर उनको षड्यंत्र करके या जो भी करके हटा। तो ऐसे एक्सेप्शंस को छोड़ के सोसाइटी वाज लीस्ट बॉर्डर्ड बाय स्टेट, बहुत कम, क्योंकि उन्होंने अपने सिस्टम्स बहुत बना लिए थे और इंडिया में अबंडेंस था ऑफ रिसोर्सेस, तो किसी के सामने हाथ फैलाने की जरूरत भी नहीं। तो मुझे ऐसा लगा उनके स्पीच को सुनकर।
वही तो रोमिला था पर वही कह रही थी कि नेगोशिएशन, हल्लाबाजी, यूनियनबाजी का जरूरत ही नहीं है, भाग जाओ कहीं और पे चले जाएंगे, लैंड है वहां पे जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज भी है, कहीं और पे चले जाएंगे, पैसा नहीं देगा तो हम चले भाई टाटा। क्योंकि एबंडेंस ऑफ रिसोर्सेज है, वहीं से तो टॉलरेंस
ये
निकलता है अल्टीमेटली।
ये पहले पहले ग्रुप्स में होता था, आजकल इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे होता है कि हम लोग अपने एक कंपनी में काम करते हैं, हमको अच्छा नहीं लगा, हम छोड़कर दूसरे कंपनी में चल दिए या दूसरे शहर
वैसे
चले।
भाई ये
पहले
लोअर
ग्रुप्स में
क्लासेस में
ज्यादा
अभी
होते
भी
थे।
लोअर क्लासेस में अभी भी ग्रुप्स में भी होते हैं, क्योंकि बंगाल का एक
हाँ
एक
हाँ
पूरा का पूरा नेबरहुड गांव पूरा का पूरा गुजरात में जाके मैकेनिक या लेबरर बन के बैठा है। तो ग्रुप्स में भी जा रहे हैं लोग। हिस्ट्री कीप्स राइमिंग।
हाँ। पर वो ऐसा नहीं है उनका कि नहीं हम सब मिल के एक विद्रोह करके चले जाएंगे, मतलब वन बाय वन पर्सनल फैमिली के हिसाब से वो जा रहे। पर हाँ आपकी बात सच
नहीं
है कि
नहीं,
एज अ ग्रुप जा रहे।
गांव के लेबरर्स ना बहुत सारे एक साथ भी जा रहे हैं। पूरा का पूरा गांव
हाँ
में मान लो कि एटलीस्ट 10-15 लोग एक साथ ही डिसाइड कर लिए कि चलो यहाँ पे और कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, चलते हैं दिल्ली या गुजरात। बहुत एकदम लोएस्ट
ओके
क्लासेस ऑफ लेबर्स, वो लोग एक साथ भी बहुत लोग चले जा रहे हैं। ये आनंद, यू वांटेड टू ऐड
ओके
समथिंग?
ओके।
We lost for what I was going to say, but I wanted to answer one thing. I think I told Neon I would answer the question. He asked me he said, why is India then only for known for caste system? Why was it highlighted uniquely? There was similar system all over the world, and I said I have a theory. So my belief again fundamentally is that there are certain again I told also that I'm in certain vein where I believe certain cultures uniquely develop around certain geographies. Like if you look at the Chinese, the early Chinese understanding of morality, they stated that every soul is born evil. And just listen very carefully. Every soul is born evil means a child is evil. It requires society to provide it structure and rules for it to go from evil to benign. So so basically society is very oppressive to people, quite oppressive to people, right? Say, but in society is different. In society is like all souls are not have no inherent characteristic. Through living through society, you basically build their characteristics. Their belief is completely different, right? Same way the Christian or the Abrahamic perspective is you are born a sinner, and then based on that your cultural rules come about. So my thing is, when this kind of caste stratification, where there was endogamy as well. So endogamy existed, endogamic practices happened even in UK, happened even in France, even in Spain, even in Portugal. Like for example, certain endogamic groups were not allowed to marry other endogamic groups, saying that the king and the clergy have determined that you cannot marry these people. You cannot marry if you marry between these groups. So, for example, many times even within the working class in pre-industrial Britain, or even during industrial Britain, people couldn't marry among each other. So, for example, maybe a butler could not marry a shoemaker, right? So they had these stratifications. What they had the benefit of was creating an alternate narrative of class. They arrived in India, and they had already learned how to talk about these topics. They arrived in India and they found these groups of people who are already extremely diverse in their organizational structure. They saw that they were
Power
changing.
changes, no? Power affects everything on the metaphysical level so much. So power will change the lexicon.
It's
Power
not
will
just
change
power.
everything. Power will change the rules. Power
It's
has
not
strength.
just
तो
power.
lexicon has strength. उन्होंने अपना lexicon लाया.
No, it's not just power. It's also because inherently we did not see social stratification as an evil thing, because we had horizontal stratification. So we designed society in such a way that all groups were stratified, but they're stratified in horizontally. Means everyone had their own place in the village. Everyone stuck strictly to that stuff based on their inherent benefits. No one told them that this particular jati is more valuable than this jati. Then they said, okay, now let's see let's classify these people. Of course, there was some stratification based on what each region needed. So some region needed a lot of Vaishyas. Like, for example, you take in the Chola kingdom, right? Vaishyas were very powerful, more powerful than the Brahmin as well, because they were the fundamental people providing the money, the trade along the entire Southeast Asian region. So they were able to barter with the king, the Chola king, saying, we are providing you money for your campaign, go and displace these Srivijayan's, who are basically bringing tax. Again, that's very interesting. The Srivijayans are putting high tariffs on goods. And these free market, the Vaishyas in the Chola region were like, break that tariff. We want free market. We don't want this Donald Trump style tariff regime. So they've sponsored the Chola invasion to this region. But maybe in the north, where the more feudality, more military people held sway, because the needs were of defeating invading Turks or defeating people who keep coming in, they need to pander to the Kshatriya group. So they became more powerful. They were paid more money. They were provided rich palaces and resources. So they came here and found these different stratifications. But they're like, no, we have decided in our society, it is what the clergy, then the king, then the people who are making money, and then the people who are just usable for everything, right? They came and applied that same stratification here. I mean, they framed it in such a way. There would definitely be in different regions that stratification, where people were like maybe temple towns with lots of Brahmins. Are like, okay, we are the bosses here. We will rule everything. We will tell everyone what to do. I mean, it's inherent what do you call it, ape morality, right? The most powerful person in that group takes over the power structure. So that's my problem. So then we didn't understand. We just pandered to that thing, saying, "Oh yes, I'm getting influence from this Gora foreigner. So let me just push this narrative." That's why I think it happened. But the other thing I'll think of again. I forgot.
Yeah, go ahead, Abhay.
I have
Then we will come
something
back
to
to Anand with this question. Okay, Anand, think of the answer. Now we'll go ahead with Abhay.
आनंद ने जो बात कही कि वी हैड हॉरिजॉन्टल हायरार्की, मुझे ये जेंडर में भी दिखता है.
Not hierarchy, stratification.
Stratification, sorry for using the wrong word. ये स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन पुरुष और स्त्री में भी हमें दिखता है. भारत में वेस्ट में थोड़ा हायर एंड लोअर था, इंडिया में भी हो सकता है थोड़ा हायर लोअर हो, बट दैट वर्टिकल डिफरेंस वाज लेसर बिटवीन मेन एंड वुमेन. हमेशा बोला जाता था कि स्त्री के अपने गुण हैं और पुरुष के अपने गुण हैं, दोनों का अपना अपना योगदान. तो ये जेंडर में भी दिखता है. अनदर थिंग दैट आई हैड टू आस्क आनंद कि क्या मतलब इंडिया को एक्सेसिवली विलिफाई किया गया बाय एब्राहमिक सिविलाइजेशंस और एब्राहमिक ग्रुप्स, क्योंकि वी वर द मोस्ट डेवलप्ड नॉन एब्राहमिक सिविलाइजेशन. अगर आप देखें तो वी आर द रूट ऑफ नॉन एब्राहमिक थिंकिंग। यहाँ तक कि चाइना पर भी जो बहुत सारा इन्फ्लुएंस है या जापान पे भी इन्फ्लुएंस है, वो भारतीय सभ्यता का है। बहुत कुछ इंडोनेशिया में हम सब जानते हैं। तो ये भी क्या कारण था कि सभ्यता जो अब्राहमी सभ्यता का सबसे बड़ा प्रतिद्वंद्वी था जो उन्होंने देखा, वो भारतीय सभ्यता। इसीलिए उनको लगा कि भारत को और अधिक कलंकित करना चाहिए।
So let me just simply answer the question from Varun Dev. I don't know what LPI is. I'm not an economics major. I just studied maybe two levels, economics 101 and 102. That's it. Beyond that, I've done basic macro and microeconomics.
Libertarian Party of India. Libertarian Party of India's. Yeah.
Oh, I have so many views.
Okay, then answer Abhay's question first. Then we will end the live stream with your views on LPI's economic vision. Okay.
Okay, so Abhay's question was again, I lost. I forgot. Too many things in my brain right now. What is the question again?
Abhay asked, do you think India was villainized, especially because they realized that India is a non-pagan competition of ours?
No. They villainized everything. They targeted everyone. We are the only ones who survived. They went after pagan societies in the Middle East. They lied about them, like really lied. Like they created so many narratives about them. Like all their claims about pagan society in the Middle East are from their holy books. Like none of them is in secondary sources, primary sources. Like for example, they say, oh, they used to marry their children to animals and all that nonsense shit, like animal sacrifice, children sacrifice. What not they say about the pagan societies of the Middle East? They say horrible things. You have no idea the things they say about them, and they justify.
They say the same about American societies, like the Christians. They say the same thing about the Incas and Mayans
Yes.
the North.
With the Inca and the Mayan, they are justified because they actually did put sacrificing as a part of their tradition. Unfortunately, that's
they were justified. They were justified in the context of Incas and Mayans, and they were justified in the context of, I think, Druids even. So they thought, acha, 2 + 2 = 4. Maybe these pagans are also that way.
No. It is done before this. Before they even got to the pagans of the Isles, British Isles, and of the northeastern peoples. It is already started. You have to understand. They had to frame themselves as superior in morality to the local. So they created narratives, right? They created multiple narratives with multiple people. So that's my point. They didn't survive. Those people didn't. They didn't adapt in time. Like we also didn't adapt in time for the economic colonization. You understand? They use for us. They were not able to destroy all our structure because it's so varied, right? The pagans in that region were so like a small region of a small land space, not very large land space. Luckily for us, we are quite geographically segregated, so it's difficult for them to like basically target all of us. And they mainly started off in the Bengal presidency. They didn't start off all over India, right? They started in the Bengal presidency, so the narratives were based on that region. So then it was difficult for them to apply it everywhere, right? So that same narrative that they could design there had to keep changing in each region. So that's why they were doing all this like caste census and all in the multiple places they were doing. Not caste census, jati census. They're like, this jati is this jati is this. They're like, can you tell us what is this jati? Then he went to the local Brahmin and said, can you help me out? I don't know what these groups are. Can you define them to me? The Brahmin is like, see, I got a good chance to get myself in the good books of this person who gave me service, providing me money. Then like, oh, I'm the best in the group. Like, everyone likes me, everyone loves me, everyone comes to me for stuff. So put me on top. I mean, human nature. It makes sense. Human nature. Any human would do that. They didn't know what they were doing long term to their community. They didn't realize what they were doing, right? Because they didn't understand how again, same way, they didn't understand how the foreigner would use that data to his advantage.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm just responding to Neon and then your thoughts on LPI's economics. Neon, if you are Bengali, if you can read Bengali, then start with R.C. Majumdar's book called Hindu-Muslim Sanskriti, which we covered from one of our live streams recently, like 1 or 2-3 months back. Okay. Check it out. We discussed it in one sitting because otherwise R.C. Majumdar's books are usually gigantic. If you want to start with a non-gigantic one, then start with Hindu-Muslim Sanskriti. or if not, then you can start with another non-gigantic book of his, which is on the Mauryan state, or specifically on Chandragupta Maurya, right? That one is a fun one. Or get to his gigantic volumes. So Anand, LPI is economics.
Before I go on to
Is
LP, I want
here.
to answer. I want to say something our Aniket said also. So they said they use caste to impose Christianity. No, the reason Christianity is strengthens in India is because not only have you created Dada correctly said, India has become almost Protestant Hinduism. Like literally, the way we look at Hinduism is from a Protestant lens, not from a dharmic lens. There is a fundamental problem there, right? So
Yeah, that is absolutely.
Sorry?
That is absolutely true.
And the reason we are not able to counter Christianity is because if you look at yourself from a Protestant lens, it is very easy to jump to the moral framework of a Christian. Even the Orthodox in India have started becoming like that. Like I literally am like, I have to sit and talk to some of my Orthodox family members and say, stop framing yourself in the concept of good and evil. Dharma is not good and evil. Dharma is duty and not doing your duty. Sometimes what is your duty will seem evil to populations. To large, yeah. What will seem like evil to many populations, right? Around the world. Like if I'm going to impose jail time or capital punishment on someone who raped someone, to someone who sees human life as sacrosanct beyond any belief, then that's evil to them, right? You can't frame it as good and evil. Duties based on society requires.
People who say America was founded on absolutely founded on Judeo-Christian values, to quote Vivek Ramaswamy. Now he knows he says that for political gains, of course. But even current American society, capitalism, capital punishment, none of this is congruent with Christianity. They go happily with it, modifying everything, and people think they are such a Christian society.
No, you look at the fundamental thing. Their obsession with wealth. They're obsessed with personal wealth. When in Christianity, personal wealth is the opposite. That's why you understand a lot of these. There are a lot of conservative Democrats, like Christian Democrats, who are getting attracted to Marxist ideas. That's the reason why there's so many people are voting for Democrats. So many Christians are voting for Democrats right now.
I attended a missionary school, and what I have learned about Christianity is that poverty is a virtue.
Yeah.
So how does a Christian society become capitalist?
Because they're not a Christian society.
Immoral.
That's the problem. No, the entire fallacy of the American myth is that they're a Christian society. They're not. They are a secular, Freemason society. They're a secular Freemason society. Many of the
what about the Protestant ethic, though?
The work ethic.
The Protestant ethic, though?
The work ethic, not the religious ethic. The Protestant religious ethic is one of independence from clergy. That's all. The Protestants' only reason for the Protestant is that you read religion not from the clergy, but directly from the book. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need a high priestly class. Oh, sorry.
Now we'll get Academic Man to comment on this and the Romila Thapar comment as well, speech as well. But first, okay, one of you will have to take Barbarika Didi's question here as well. Maybe Academic Man can take it. But firstly, I just want to take up what Varun Dev said here, because I was about to say that bawal ye hai ke USA pretends to have Christian morality. They don't have it. They are not Christian by any means. We are the ones who pretend to hate Christianity and pretend to be Hindus. We behave like Christians and have Christian morality.
Actually, in my view, US is more Hindu than India in many ways, in their moral framework.
It is. ये मैं नहीं बोलता हूँ क्योंकि मेरा ब्लैक टी शर्ट है और मुस्टैच के बिना दाढ़ी है, मगर तुमने बोला शुद्ध हिंदी में तो ये ठीक है. That is true actually. Unfortunately. Academic Man, go ahead.
क्या बोल रहे हो लोग?
क्या बात
No. Okay, so I'll get to Barbarika Smriti's question first. कि ऐसे ही कास्ट बना दिया, हमने मान लिया, ऐसे ही नहीं हुआ. It got incentivized. Like with every aspect of human behavior that works, it's the result of incentives. जब when they were asking people, "Aap Brahman ho," then even Dalits were saying, "Hum Brahman hai, Kshatriya hai," and all that. Where then they said that, "Acha, actually, you know what? Poor people get benefits if you become poor and backward." Then everyone said, "हाँ मालिक, हम तो backward ही है, हमको बहुत मारा पीटा," and all that. So it's always worked according to incentives. Tomorrow again, imagine if somehow it won't happen again because of democracy. Imagine if being a Brahmin, if it becomes beneficial. Okay, then again these Chandrasekhar Ravan will say, "I'm a biggest Brahmin in the world." Okay, हमको मारपीट के Brahmin नहीं रखा. So it's the same logic, identity is as fluid as water. I'm not talking about gender identity, I'm talking about status and class identity and all that stuff. Okay, so in that sense, we have to understand that it won't. If you think that the Abrahamics played a game, yes, they played a game, but people also played a game in the system. मतलब खेलते खेलते कब हमारे ऊपर गेम हो गया वो अलग बात है, but people are basically fighting for resources. That's what they're doing. That's why they accepted these stupid points by the and you have to understand that जो उन्होंने किया, the actual worst innovation of what they did was they gave us census, caste based census. वो race के ऊपर कर दिया, that they had in the US and in England and all. तो race के ऊपर based caste census कर दिया, which means they froze everything. Okay, और उसके ऊपर से बोला कि जितना तुम लो हो, जितना oppressed हो उतना अच्छा है, और oppressed हो जाओ. So that worked. So anyway, so apart from that, I wanted to also say that that what else were the questions?
Romila Thapar.
What other questions?
What the hell did Romila Thapar say here? Why was she critiquing commies, anti-Hindu people, anti-India people? Even Max Weber को भी anti-Hindu प्रमाण कर दिया यहाँ पे, and as well as Hindutva socialists.
नहीं, that was in vogue. That is still in vogue actually. Like decolonization इन लोगों ने किया था. They just never expected कि इससे निकल के जैसा ही book लिख के इसके खिलाफ चला जाएगा. Like this is. So they actually worked very hard on the decolonization thing till they never realized कि तुम जैसे LPI वाले libertarians, Hindutvawadis, they will all take it up and use it. Okay, you have to understand till the 80s and 90s that that aspect of where the Congress will be in power for the next 50 or 100 years was the basic way to understand things. तो इन्होंने कांग्रेस को हेल्प करने के लिए भी कुछ थ्योरीज बनाया था. मतलब बहुत हिंदू बैशिंग हो गया था, एंड देन लाइक पीपल वुड इवेंचुअली क्वेश्चन कि अच्छा तो फिर कांग्रेस ने 70 इयर्स से क्या किया. देन दे वुड हैव टू से एक्चुअली नो, सी देखो हिंदू बैशिंग तो कॉलोनाइजर्स करते, हम तो नहीं करते थे, हम अच्छे लोग थे, एंड दे वुड वर्क. दे नेवर एक्सपेक्टेड दैट इन 2014 पूरा पासा पलट जाएगा, एंड दैट इट वुड सस्टेन आल्सो, नॉट लाइक अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी. So I think that was the vision behind, actually being truthful academics. That kind of whatever backfired.
But academic man, this speech of Romila Thapar is in 2016 even. I think they still didn't expect any right-wing intellectuals to really come up in 2016 onwards.
They look at उनके लिए जो हिंदुत्ववादी है, you have to understand that they barely meet. They think that जो कावड़ यात्रा में निकलता है, they are the main people. They don't expect a guy sitting in Bangalore or Calcutta and who, like you and Anand. They don't expect people like these to actually be Hindutvawadis. Okay, at most they might expect a Swapan Dasgupta, who is a rarity anyway. So they don't expect it, right? And Swapan Dasgupta is anyway more of a Burkean conservative than a actual Hindutva. Like he maybe not won't agree with the decolonization aspect that we are trying to do, right? So he may not even be a libertarian for all I know. I mean, he may not. I think he is. He may be more libertarian than a Marxist, but he may not be like a full-on like pura free market guy also either. So definitely. That's their understanding कि मतलब either Shashi Tharoor, Swapan Dasgupta और कावड़िया, मतलब बीच में मिडिल क्लास वाले नॉर्मल पीपल का एडुकेटेड पीपल ऐसा हो सकता है. आई डोंट थिंक दे एक्सपेक्टेड.
Forgot one
Anand,
category of people. They think you could also be one who just does rituals at home and like hides from society and like that's also they assume that only 3 kinds of Hindutva. That group also I forgot.
Anand, now academic man, please hold your thoughts. Lots of viewers have come up on as well. I want to ask
no,
you
I think I'll leave. I have to have dinner,
uh,
unlike you guys. So I'll just leave, and
Oh, acha.
I'd say that I had told you about Romila
Poor
Thapar's
people,
views,
hungry
and
people.
yeah, exactly. So तुम लोग तो LPI वाले खाने नहीं देते हो, तो ठीक है. So anyway, my point is, I think that before my concluding remark is that let us keep doing this. Let us keep using the left to bash the left. Okay, let us not make permanent enemies and permanent friends. Okay, and I think that
अच्छा देखो, अगर एनिमी भी क्या कर रहा है, क्या पढ़ रहा है, क्या प्रिपरेशन है एनिमी का, वो भी तो देखने का दायित्व तो बनता ही है. अगर एनिमी है,
भगवद गीता में लिखा है, if I'm not too wrong, in the Bhagavad Gita it's also written you have to learn from your enemies. Right? If I'm not wrong, again, I am not a very dharmic person. I don't read a lot of Sanskrit texts and stuff. But as far as I understand, the Mahabharata was just one dude fighting a war and everyone winning, like most Abrahamic stories, right? So it was also give and take. People winning often, sometimes, whatever. So yeah.
If only I had read more. Good night, academic man. If only I had read more Ramayana and Mahabharata, I would actually be able to refute the accusations of being Western propaganda more ably, hilariously enough. Now, Anand Sridhar, let's just clear Varun Dev's question. Your thoughts on LPI's economic views.
Okay.
Then we will have the other guests. Okay.
First, LPI's economic views are, I'm framing them only in terms of what their vision for Bharat is. Okay. So first thing, they have to deal with, before anything, they deal with how caste structures itself. So caste incentive has to start first. How are you going to provide libertarian option without first breaking down caste incentive? So for that, they have to first, they have to show economic system where you can reject your caste identity and still be able to have a financial future. So they have to structure that first, which is not done yet. This is saying we'll remove reservation, we will make it a free market. That is not enough incentive for someone who's used to the historical caste protection to want to give that up. So they need to provide something new. They have to provide some more additional information. Second thing is they have not thought through the feudalistic structure of India, right? The idea that you go to someone to get a favor. Like the way in India works is you get things done through favors, right? And for libertarian system to work perfectly, you got to break that system. So what are their vision for breaking that system? How are they going to break that favor system, right? There are a lot of pressure groups that will not want you to not allow for that to change. That's the second thing. Third thing is what are you going to do about the pushes and pulls of world economics? Because if you want to frame again the libertarian idea in India, what about like I asked this question earlier, dumping from certain kinds of countries. Like communist countries can dump easily, right? Powerful like the US economy, the swift way, they can literally cripple your economy. What is going to be your solution to that thing? If they try to cripple your economy, what's your solution there? Because the minute you make it free market, you have to integrate yourself with such systems, and then you leave your economy open to other people's attack. So what is your solution there? They're not laid that out. Fourth thing, I'm trying to remember what they said about these topics. I'm just what about for libertarianism to work in India, they have to destroy the linguistic states. Means they have to remove all states that are based on linguistics. Means it has become administrative states. Means anyone can migrate anywhere and settle anywhere. So for that to happen, that's the only way libertarianism can work in India. So you have to fight for that. What is their vision for that? Because everyone wants to keep their linguistic states. No one wants to break it up, right? That's the thing. Fifth thing, Delhi is a little far for especially in a feudal society like India. It's too far for a consistent libertarian model to apply. You need good access to courts, to the Supreme Court. You need good access to high courts, right? And frequently, I'm going to prevent particular business cases from going to Supreme Court. Like, for example, if there's large amounts of land sold to someone, I've sold my land, and then some socialist come and says, I want to, that land is not, then goes to running to court. So you have to do legal reform, judicial reform, where all business decisions don't go straight to the Supreme Court, because all it's become like it's like a funnel basically. All the cases are stuck there because everything goes to Supreme Court. So what's your legal reform for that thing? So a lot of things, there's a bunch of things they have not clearly laid their vision out for. They've laid out some basic frameworks of libertarianism, but that's just academic. I need more. That's my criticism.
They have come out with a manifesto. We will have to go through that someday on our live streams. Okay. By the way, for the other people, this is not really relevant to our discussion, but I'm just being nostalgic here, and I'm going through very, very high quality, digitally remastered, colored images, remastered and recolored images of Kolkata from 1880s, 1864. So see what Kolkata lost, guys. See the awesomeness of this. Okay, now we will have Rishabh first back on. Rishabh was in a bit of a hurry, I think. So Rishabh, yeah, go ahead, make your point. And then we will have Navavimarsh and then Aryan Trader back. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I just want to say, if you want to think about what we've lost, these images are not what we've lost. Imagine these images as the base of skyscrapers that go 50, 60 stories into the air with glass panels and steel. That is what we've lost. These images are just the base of what we've lost, not the actual heights.
Look at this.
Anyways.
Look at this. This
looks like Scotland.
This is fucking Disneyland, and just in the next alley, there's Disneyland for all turkeys. Here's a Disneyland for a guy's home. This is called Tagore Castle, and the Shonagachi famous whorehouse is just in the next alley for all Brahmin Boido Kaisto elites of the city back then. But you see, it's Disneyland everywhere in Kolkata. The entire city was a Disneyland. And I shared the picture of what this house looks like now. Oh my god. Oh my god, look at these things. Yeah, go ahead, Rishabh.
Yes, thank you. I just came in for one very limited point regarding, we've discussed Protestant work ethic a lot. I just wanted to, there's one part of it that I felt we did not touch upon a lot, is that if we look at how Protestantism developed and came about, it is a reintroduction of paganism itself into a Christian framework, where you take away, like, there are two parts of it. One is the average person social part of it, and then there is the other, which is the ruling elite political part of it. Both of these things had to work to make Protestantism such a big success in such a short time, especially in places like Germany. So the first part, which is the social everyday aspect of it, was the elimination of the middlemen of the clergy. Like, if you cannot say, am I still on?
Yeah.
So you can, so the kind of control that the medieval Christian clergy had on the lives of medieval Christians in Europe, हम लोग के ब्राह्मण जो भी even in the most rabid leftist imagination हम लोग जो कर सकते थे, उतना भी उससे बहुत ज्यादा था. Like, unless you had your child baptized in a very expensive for that time ceremony, that child was going to hell, or at the very worst be in purgatory, which is a denial of heaven to a child if they die in childbirth, for example, and they're not baptized. So the level of control, the level of monetary extraction that was happening in Christendom was much, much worse in any dharmic land. If you look at things like the sale of indulgences, where you can just pay off any sin. You've murdered someone, you've done some sort of adultery, you're a sodomite in the Christian term. You pay off some money to the clergy and all of your sins are gone. So the level of extraction was insane. This was a revolt against that for the laity, for the common folk. The second part of this was the political aspect of it. And this is where the political aspect of paganism came into Christendom, which is the okay. So the way that Catholic Christian world is set up is that there can only be one king, who is the king of kings, who is the big man JC. Ab, he is the king of heaven, but also the king of earth. But because he's too busy with divine affairs, he will delegate all of his earthly affairs to the Pope. Now, the Pope also is very busy with earthly divine affairs. So he will then delegate his authority to the Emperor of Rome. Now, this is how the theology was set up. The reality was that the Roman emperors wanted all of these priests to come in and basically legitimize themselves. This was their version of Brahmin Bhojan, basically. And they had five of these major priesthoods, which were called the Orthodox Pentarchy back in the day. But when the Roman Empire fell, one of these five pentarchs, which was a bishop of Rome, crowned himself as primus inter pares, or first amongst equals, and he became the overlord of all of Christianity. And the Pope considered himself as a supreme ruler of all of Christianity, and all the kings of Europe would rule in the name of the Pope, or rather in the name of God through the Pope. Now, when the Holy Roman Empire was set up, that was a sort of a early attempt at a power grab. कि भैया Rome है अभी भी, so we will have to negotiate our authority. And there was this huge struggle that went back and forth in the Holy Roman Empire and the Catholic world between the clergy and the ruling elites. Now, for them, it was a attempt at creating. If you were a king and you saw this idea of Protestantism, what did you see? You see a way of, or rather, you saw a way of breaking from this overarching control that the church had over your legitimacy to rule. Like if you look at examples like Henry the Eighth was technically not a Protestant; he was always a Catholic, but more technicality. But Henry the Eighth is an example. He wanted to divorce his wives. The Christian church was not allowing him to divorce his wives, so he used it as a way to break up from the centralized authority, decentralize his realm, and rule it according to his laws. So did a lot of the German kings, especially in the north of Germany, that was really far away from the influence of the papacy. So, in a way, in the personal way, it was a direct connection with God. In the political way, it was an attempt at decentralization, and that is also what created the ultimate dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. It was a shambles of its past selves once Protestantism was done with it. And it became so easy for Napoleon eventually later on to come in and destroy it. So that is why, see, if you are gonna blame or say that Protestant work ethic nahi hai in a dharmic land, you have to first acknowledge the fact that Protestantism itself is an attempt at decentralization and regaining of your personal liberties away from overarching imperial and religious uh, overarching religious control. Protestantism itself is the return of paganism to Europe within the Christian framework. So it's not the Protestant
Yeah.
work ethic, it is the pagan work ethic itself that came
Yeah.
in. There is no such thing as a
Yeah.
Protestant work ethic. It is always the pagan work ethic.
Hmm.
And that's my literature.
Aryan, we will get back to this point later on. Aryan is pointing out that, but it was opposite in Indian context. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, now Navavimash, what did you think of Romila Thapar here? And what do you think of the beautiful buildings, the stuff we lost?
Yes, that buildings was quite a surprise to me. Like normally I don't venture into Instagram and others. So this is something which we lost. But do you think, question to
1880s, 1860s Kolkata, 1860s Kolkata, 1870s Kolkata, and more prosperous, and the shops are filled with food. It's more prosperous than 1980s Soviet Union. And
They're
look
just
at the
showing
beauty. Why can't
they're
we?
just showing
Why
one
can't we
section of
walk
the
around and look at beautiful things?
no, they're showing
yeah,
one
correct. We
section
have
of the place, not the whole Kolkata.
Yeah,
no. So
but
at
that can be
that time
argued even
Kolkata was
today.
small. No, Kolkata was small at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
time. It was like Bolo Bazaar and all those areas.
yeah.
like that was original Kolkata, old
Yes.
Kolkata. What you see is
Yeah.
the Kolkata that is supposed to be there. It's not something as big
Yeah.
as spread as we see today. Okay, so on the Kolkata part. So correct, like people would know correct, the Shawnapoli community.
No, first on the Romila
in
Thapar
Kolkata.
part, please. First Romila Thapar.
Okay, Romila Thapar, like I did not hear the full, but I heard last part of the part
Oh,
of it.
acha.
So yeah,
Okay.
but my understanding from the last part hearing it is that as mentioned by academic man, that there was a change at heart uh, from the ruling junta, okay, and they wanted to do some like penance for their sins, okay, to do some good things here and there, so that if somebody writes a history on us, they will see, okay, they did these two things. But my question is doing something good was inherently natural, original, or something to show off so that people who write, they will write some good things about us, not only about poverty porn. That's my question.
I think they needed to absolve Congress of a lot of wrongdoing, because now if we go on talking about casteism, caste-based bad behavior, even in 2016 or in 2016, why she says this, I think that's the only explanation, is that she didn't expect these arguments to be used by the right wing, which she is in fact right about, because the right wing is not really using her arguments. We are just looking at it for the first time today. But in general, they needed to absolve Congress of its incompetency, because if even after ruling for 50 years and 60 years, you go on saying that casteism is going on, it's bad, and Hinduism is bad, then what did you do? What did you solve then? You were in power for all these years. Therefore, they had to come out with defenses against for the Indian state and say that no, actually, there's not much casteism anymore, because Congress did such a great job in the end, in fact. Yeah, go ahead, Anand.
A different theory. So
Okay.
proper Marxists do not like to bring social dynamics into clear Marxist theory. So everything has to be framed in the idea of rich elites and poor population. Like everything has to be framed like this. That's the same reason why even in the US, right, before wokeism got so popular, the Marxists were very strict about framing in terms of rich elites of all races versus the poor majority of all races. Like if you look at old Bernie Sanders, right? Old Bernie Sanders is exactly that. No wokeism, just pure the oppressed majority are being oppressed by this elite minority. So the same thing here. The same thing here is the idea that casteism is just a way of where the oppressive people used economic dynamics to keep everyone oppressed below at a lower level. It's not because of the social hierarchy. It's because of the Marxist way of saying, oh, this is what people always use. And that's why capitalism is dangerous, because it'll create this distinction very clearly. People who can earn a lot of money will become the economic elite, and they'll oppress everyone else. So wherever they go, they'll frame it. The reason why in India they change their things a bit is because they have the Hindu-Muslim fight. So when the Hindu-Muslim fight comes, they're like, oh, we have to frame, this is not about class, because a lot of Muslims are rich, few Muslims are rich, and most Muslims are poor. So how do we frame this? We frame this by pushing all the rich Muslims down with the poor Muslims, and framing all the poor groups, Dalits, OBCs, Muslims, etc., against this elites who have a lot of money, basically, and they are the upper caste people. So you understand, they want to force it into that dynamic, and that's exactly why she's doing it here also. She's doing it for that reason only, to frame it that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, go ahead, Navavimash. You had to add something.
Yeah, just only one thing I would I'd like to back to the video about Romila Thapar. So, like in my how do I frame it? That I am skeptical of a party, okay, who has been hell bent on destroying Indian society, culture, and traditions over 4 decades. Okay, and they suddenly they wake up and do something little nice here and there. So, I am very skeptical person. Correct. So my concern is that the elites who were ruling the ruling elite, they said we are not making enough money, so you need to break this poverty porn and do something else. And they would say, okay, let's then close this Marxist part and then do something else.
Yes, there was a huge section of
assumption.
Congress who wanted that. Yes, yeah.
So that could be the
What did you have to say
reason.
about the buildings? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, buildings. Yeah, buildings were like okay. So on that part, so the capitalism that we had in the 1800s, okay, what we are seeing now,
Yeah.
and British actually helped it to become better because it was the capital of India. Okay. So, what do you think, in your perspective, what changed in terms of like it was a conspiracy against Bengal to give them communism and take all the back to West India, or we did,
Nehru,
or we
definitely.
did.
He started deindustrialization.
But I'm saying that is like how much role we Bengalis played for our demise. How much role we played.
Up until pre-19, wait, I don't know the history of the Bengali Congress leaders. How enthusiastic were they about Nehru's deindustrialization policies? Does anybody of you know this?
No,
How much
I
were they
haven't
on board with it? Yeah, without knowing that,
I
we
don't
can't
think they were.
blame the
I think
Bengali Congress leaders.
Siddhartha Shankar Roy fought a lot because I know some part of it. Because doing some podcasts, that Siddhartha Shankar Roy was like fought to get more. Okay, in terms of initial capacity. But the other
What
people
about the
within
others?
Congress,
Bidhan Rai, Profullo and all?
I think Bidhan Rai was. I think he was a capitalist. Okay, Bidhan Rai. So Bidhan Rai was. I think like he get whatever he could. Okay. But my question is that have we done any research that why a society is so prosperous? Like again, I go back to correct. So the word bonik, tradesman, correct, that was synonymous with Bengal. Okay, and we had a caste called Shorno bonik. Okay, and there were many castes like this, including Shah. Okay, they are like so we had a specific
and different
caste
kinds of boniks as well. The people who traded in spices,
Exactly.
they are the Gondo boniks, and the people who traded in gold are Shorno boniks.
Yeah, so we had a rich tradition of caste group who did only trade and industry. So how, like it was not only one Swarna Bonik, as you mentioned, there are like a group of castes who did different kind of industry. Now, what role and how that whole caste got wiped out in 100 years? How it happened? Like, have we done any research on this to find out what really happened, so that we can, if we want to rebuild it again, as a hypothesis, what we will do? We don't know what really happened.
We will take Anand on this. Wait, Anand, one moment. I think Islam largely destroyed trade and the systems of trade, etc. According to Romila Thapar, and mainly according to Irfan Habib even. And the way the disruptions happened, that led the country to get impoverished in some portions, and some portions like Kolkata, which didn't even exist, they became such beautiful places and stuff. So there was disruption and there was extraction. Stuff was just getting stolen and sent to England. So all of that screwed us definitely. Yeah, go ahead, Anand.
See, I don't know where I read this or watched this somewhere. I was watching a history podcast of the time when the early British, the first British, basically the East India Company, when they first arrived in the Bengal, right? If I'm not wrong, the Nawabs were reigning at that time, and their taxes were so bad, and so they were treating the population so badly that the entire population basically asked the British to come and kick out the Nawabs. If I'm not wrong, right? And I'm not wrong. There was
not just taxes. Siraj-ud-Dowla was a rabid Islamist who used to pick up women from ponds and stuff, who used to go bathe there after the guys' lunches have been done, etc.
So
people were fed up with Siraj-ud-Dowla.
In that same thing, I remember there were certain so-called Vaishya communities in Bengal. I think Seth, there's a major guy with a Seth last name.
Yeah, they are Marwari. Jagat Seth. So, they were Marwaris.
Right. And they basically, to get power, they basically broke down many of the social structures of Bengal that time.
Basically, because the British wanted them to help them out in that. I can't remember exactly where I read
Yeah.
this, man. I need to check this.
But by
So
the way,
when that happened-
Anand, people like Jagat Seth were initial backers of Sirajuddaulah even. When Sirajuddaulah fucked with his business, that's when he got pissed off and joined hands with the British and
correct,
funded
correct,
Mir Jafar.
exactly. So I think that's basically what happened is certain large, very powerful Vaishya communities basically backstabbed the population of that region. And then when the Piper came calling, they basically were targeted, like similar to what the French Revolution happened, right? So that could be a reason. I guess someone has to do a little more research on this. But my understanding of, in terms of social dynamics, is that when someone betrays a community so badly, your population so badly, they take on the ire of the entire population, no matter whether they are part of their community or not, or they really were responsible or not. So that could be why that these communities got wiped out.
Jagat Seth's actions were not really taken as a betrayal of the populace in general, because Sirajuddaulah was screwing up people's lives. So Mir Jafar everyone was happy with Sirajuddaulah going for different reasons. Jagat Seth's interests were mainly economics, but everyone was happy with Sirajuddaulah going away.
So I'm saying, what happened late after British came to power? How did the dynamics of the state change? Because clearly there's a time when Bengal was prosperous under the British, and suddenly it descends to basically all the crops being taken, money being stolen, substandard healthcare being provided, right? It's something causes that severe to fall, because at some point it benefited the British to look after the Bengali state because it's providing them so much money, and suddenly it just crashes to like, I don't care about these people, I'm just going to take whatever I can and run. So what is that precipice? We need to find that.
You see, when they set up Kolkata as the capital, back then their territory was such that Kolkata was the most fruitful place, because everything else was being run by Muslim kings and Marathas. So when they get Delhi, they shift their capital to Delhi. But up until the British were ruling, at least Kolkata, and therefore Kolkata's adjacent places, were pretty prosperous. Kolkata's rise happened under the British, and the decline didn't happen under the British. Decline started with Nehru, and then was absolutely fucked in 77 because of CIM. And 77, in fact, is a very important year, because that's when rest of India decides we have had enough with this kind of communism thing. Let's do something else now. Bengal goes hard left in 77. Back when everyone else decided let's not do communism anymore. So that's when West Bengal went woke and went broke. Started doing so, because and when you have such wealth, these are the 1800s, right? So from 1800s onwards, the Brahmins, Boitos, Kaistos of Kolkata amassed so much wealth that remnants of them are still found today. Even today, Kolkata is not Bihar because of them, because of their wealth. Even in 1980s, we have Satyajit Ray, and even in the 70s, 80s, we have people flocking to Kolkata. It was after a massive long rule of CPM that it was impoverished enough. The impoverishment of Kolkata, I don't lay at the feet of British, I think.
No, I'm saying Kolkata. I was talking Bengal in general. I was talking Bengal in general, not Kolkata specifically.
Right. For Bengal in general, it makes sense, because Bengal would be including Bangladesh, and all of that's going to Manchester, and the indigo farming. So that way, the British definitely fuck the entire region.
Correct.
Go ahead, Navavimarsh.
No, I think I am done with my comment. So understood lot of things.
Okay.
But yeah, I will go back to and read see the whole podcast again.
Yeah, definitely do. Mainly because Romila Thapar did an exceptional job criticizing commies, let's say evil Western people who hate India. Max Weber didn't really mean it that way, but ended up making some criticisms which Romila Thapar finds useless, and mainly Hindutwadi socialists. That's where these arguments are mostly interesting, because she says that where's this king dependency? Where's this centralization? Where's this dependence on a book? People are doing business any way they can and are creating hierarchies. People are changing professions every way. Okay. So it's a very fascinating speech. Go ahead, Abhay.
Yeah.
All I want to say is that the socialist mindset has to be taken out from the mind of Hindus. And this socialism is all pervading. It's not just in economics, it's in social life also. कि गवर्नमेंट बताए कि एसी का टेम्परेचर कितना होना चाहिए, दैट इज सनातनी somehow सनातनी वॉट एवर. और फिर गवर्नमेंट बताए कि बेडरूम में तुमको कैसे रहना चाहिए, गवर्नमेंट बताए कि तुमको ब्रेकअप और पैचअप कब करना चाहिए. तो ये जो है ना कि स्टेट को माई बाप मानना कि वो मम्मी पापा के जैसा हमारा ध्यान रखेंगे और मॉरल पुलिसिंग करेंगे, और सोसाइटी
Yeah.
से टूट जाना कि मम्मी पापा मुझे कुछ ना बोले पर काला कोट में बैठा हुआ व्यक्ति बोल सकता है कि इसको जेल में डालो क्योंकि ये मॉरल वायलेशन के।
Yeah.
तो हमें यहीं पर मैं बोल रहा था कि हमारे यहाँ प्रोटेस्टेंटिज्म ने उल्टा काम किया कि सोसाइटी से पावर छीन के स्टेट को दे दिया, और स्टेट ने इस बहाने से पावर गेन किया क्योंकि हिंदू सोसाइटी वाज वेरी इंडिपेंडेंट एंड डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड कि तुम्हारे सोसाइटी के रिचुअल्स बहुत खराब है, तुम्हारे प्रैक्टिसेस बहुत खराब है, तो हमको स्टेट को पावर दो, हम तुमको बताएंगे कि कैसे मॉरल लाइफ जीना। तो ये इंडिया के केस में प्रोटेस्टेंटिज्म था क्योंकि हिंदुइज्म इज फंडामेंटली अ डिफरेंट वे ऑफ थिंकिंग। तो इसीलिए इन कौमियों को इनके ही अस्त्र से काटो और ये कार्यक्रम जारी रखो जब तक समाप्त ना हो।
हाँ, or just for clarification to the algorithm gods, we mean kato in the metaphorical sense. We are not calling for violence. Don't delete my channel. Okay then. Thanks Abhay. Thanks Anand a lot for joining the conversation. Thanks guys on the live chat for joining the conversation. See you guys soon, and make sure you donate to keta.org. Yeah, go ahead Anand.
No, just the one thing. So I think we need to be very accurate with what we use as socialism. Like I do understand where Abhay is coming from, but I don't think so. We are specifically socialism that is being posted over. It is feudalism. It's a feudal economy. We still a feudal economy. What they did is they took communist ideas of where you give power to the from the basically from the population. You give it to a centralized group of people who will provide all the answers to you, right? Which is how the commies. That's why India is one of the few countries where commie parties exist. Like you go anywhere around the world, in most democracies, commie parties don't exist. They won't allow you. They won't allow communist parties to exist because they know they have rejected this idea that all power needs to go to the state. But we have accepted that. My thing is that we are not socialists in the sense of the how true socialists would say it. Like we're very capitalist as people. We don't want to share our wealth with other people. We don't want to pay taxes. We want to keep as much wealth as possible. We don't want to share it with people outside of our. We are actually very capitalist, right? We just want the state to provide more services than what would normally be expected in a decently democratic state, or even a centralized state, but without too much control. We want more than that. We want communism. It's imbibed in our sense. We don't want to call it communism because we're scared to call ourselves communists. But a lot of Hindus are very communist minded. They're like, मुझे माई बाप मुझे बोलो क्या करना है, मुझे नहीं आता, कुछ नहीं आता.
Like Trinamool is as leftist as anybody in India, and nobody gets that Trinamool is leftist. When right wingers criticize CPIM, when Sandeep Sanyal criticizes CPIM, Trinamool supporters get happy. They think Sandeep Sanyal is appreciating Trinamool. What the fuck? Because he's criticizing CPIM. Now, one question I have for you two and the people in the comment section to ponder over right now. It's not for the next. I'm not giving you a homework. I'm just continuing the discussion for next 5 minutes.
Okay. I've got my own life to do homework.
See, when the era is overall in favor of things like leftist politics, socialism, communism, etc., when the mood in the air is socialism, everyone tries to paint their ideology or paint their personal views through the lens of socialism, communism, right? Which is why again Dharampal, such a Gandhian, staunch supporter of Gandhian, goes on explaining stuff that is today picked up by Hindutvadis. Now, for that reason, do you think people like Swami Vivekanand, it would be, I think, I don't think there are people like Swami Vivekanand, but let's say spiritual stalwarts like Swami Vivekanand who declared that spirituality is our thing and science is West's thing because we are better at spirituality. They might have culture, etc. They don't have spirituality. Do you think that was a gigantic blunder and we should have made it clear even back then? No, bro, we love earning money as well as doing meditation. Do you think I don't think we can blame them really if we were face to face back then, because they would have to play some socialist and commie games just to be relevant. But did they commit a mistake? Should they have said that we love to make money and we are going to do spiritualism? Would we be better off today then?
I don't think so. He was wrong at all.
Didn't they create the dichotomy? Didn't they create the binary?
No, because his target was one specific thing: dharmic revivalism. Like he did not think dharmic revivalism required him to work on the what do you call it, the money making ability of Hindus, because Hindus always have had that, right?
But the way he framed it, that particular sentence gives Hindutva socialists a leeway to claim that therefore, except spirituality, everything will be done by the West. We will just teach people yoga and meditation.
If you're framing it to what people are using it now, I think it is a blunder. But I'm saying from his perspective, his task was very clear. His task was to revive a spiritual consciousness spiritual dharmic consciousness among Hindus. See, because they were already doing they're doing their job, making money. That was not the thing he needed to change. He needed to change the idea that you need to start having a dharmic revival along with your monetary responsibilities.
Yeah.
That's why he started this movement, right?
He didn't see povertarian Hindus, socialist Hindus around him. That's a good point.
He didn't. See, you're right. His environment was what he was looking at. He was not like looking at the sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rishabh.
Yeah. Okay. Here is, I think, one thing that, and it's just my opinion. I don't have anything to back it up, but people are always a product of their time. There's this thing called great man history, which which I really don't like. Which says that there is this one great man like Alexander or Napoleon who just comes once upon a time, or this guy like Tokugawa Ieyasu comes in Japan and one time changes everything, and systems change, halat badal gaye, waqt badal gaye ho jata hai just because of that one person. This is an idea that I really don't like. Every person is a product of their times, and systems and complex social interactions are way too much. No matter how great of a human being you are, you cannot change them. So I would not blame any one person. Now, if you were a capitalist at a time where you were under an extractive economic system, then how could you also be a nationalist? You're getting my point. कि dichotomy क्यों हो रहा था? It's a very different context today when it's our money being used to funnel our businesses in a large way. Even if it's foreign businesses, in a large way, they are coming and making us money in some way or the other also, in addition to them also. उस समय it was extractive. If you're a businessman in the British Raj, it means that you're extracting indigo from Bihar and you're taking away sugarcane from UP. And through the port of Calcutta and Mumbai, you're having them transported to Manchester and London. So how can you be both a capitalist and a nationalist when you're under an extractive foreign rule? It's a very difficult marriage to happen. The problem is that Indian society and the Indian psyche in general is still colonized. So a lot of us have not been able to come out of that mindset still. Now they still see कि extractive हो रहा है. Capitalism मतलब inherently extractive है. They don't understand. They have never been either taught or made to understand that if it is Indian capitalism, then it is the rising tide. Pehle it was British capitalism, which was the rising tide for Britain. I mean, it's very well documented. Britain industrialized on the backs of Bihar and Bengal. So that is the mentality that people have. So,
and what do you call Andhra Pradesh?
Sure, yeah, and Tamil Nadu, a lot of these places. But we need new heroes. Like, I think the best thing that the government could do is give Bharat Ratna to this guy, the founder of Infosys, because he brought capitalism back to India. Can you imagine what India would have been like without the IT revolution today, where we all would have been? Because you need to set up new heroes, you need to set up new idols for this age, and forget about the people who were answering very different questions from what we were. Us samay ke priorities, us samay ke point of views were not relevant. That is it is essentially the same issue that we have with trads, right? Okay, why do you want to go back to the Vedic age? Vedic Hinduism was dead 2000 years ago. Not just under Islamic rule, not just under British rule. Vedic Hinduism was killed by Hindus who went into Puranic Hinduism and started worshipping Mahadev and Narayan instead of Agni and Vayu. So why do you want to go back to that time?
if Vedic Hindus themselves were going on writing and building upon ideas and evolved from what they were 50 years back, 100 years back, 500 years back, why should we go back to that part? Jump all the other Hindus in the last
Exactly.
1500 years and get back to 2000 BC.
I think
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
think
go ahead,
there
Anand.
is.
Okay, everyone is
I think-
everyone has a point. Wait, let's start with Anand. Then we'll come to you, Abhay.
No, I'd rather allow for the marketplace of ideas. Honestly, from my perspective, all forms of Hinduism should be encouraged. Like everyone, go and purport your theory, push forward your ideas to the population, and people who gel with your ideas will follow you, will join you in your tribe. And those tribes that are doing well will succeed, and those tribes that are not doing well will remain in the margin of society. Like, I mean, they're not marginal.
Ideally,
they basically do smaller groups, right? So I want the diversity to exist. I want people to have a like I want like the Shramanas and the Vedic people for discussed ideas for a long time. I want it to continue. I want more Hindus to have a discourse from different perspectives. You be orthodox in your ideas, but I want more ideas to flourish. I don't want it to we choose one, say, okay, this is the best, and everyone has to just follow that. Because then what happens is, like I said, again, it's a centralization of Hindu structure, which will cause us to stagnate and make us susceptible to other groups. That's the worry. So the more diversity. So, for example, if there are some people who want to do Vedic Hinduism, do it. Learn the Vedas, the old what do you call it, Sanskrit style, Vedic Sanskrit style.
Old Sanskrit. Yeah,
learn it, propagate
That's
that, but don't
Sanskrit.
expect us to support you just because you have said you are Vedic Sanskrit. So people who want to do idol worship right now and not do do worship on the fire altar, they will choose idol worship. You can't tell them no, you have to only do Vedic fire altar stuff, right? You can't do that.
Which is why ideally everyone must advocate for a libertarian state. Every time we bring up libertarianism, people think we are talking about being libertarians in your personal life. No, the state has to be libertarian. In a libertarian state, ideally, I think all commies, Sharia compliant people, Sharia wannabe people, trads, Vedic Hindus, non-Vedic Hindus, everyone must want a libertarian state, because then you can have your own town or your own resort, your own private area. No, create a lot of hills, no, where everything is equal. You don't own private property, etc. Buy an SEZ and have your commie heaven there. Let's see if you die of poverty or not. You won't, of course, because you're connected with the rest of the country, which is libertarian. And you make an SEZ and do Sharia law there. Just don't behead people because of blasphemy, because there will be overarching laws. But more or less, whatever your beautiful Sharia things you can do inside that land.
But just
you can
move
have
to
a commune,
Auroville.
you can have a Sharia compliant state. Yeah. And which is what I think beef ban also can be tackled that way. Just have it distributed among district rights. Local district magistrates can have a say on beef. So you don't have to move to a different state for everything. Just go to the different district and buy some beef there. But any district that deems beef too important should have the right to ban it, because otherwise we go ahead and deban all animal products. It's a waste of time policy-wise. Go ahead, Abhay, now.
So yeah, I was saying कि ये जो ट्रेडिशनल और मॉडर्न का जो लड़ाई है ना, इसमें हम दो एक्सट्रीम्स में जाते हैं. आई थिंक आनंद ने भी ये बात पहले रखी थी कि इंडियन कल्चर का इवॉल्व होना और वेस्ट से रिप्लेस हो जाना, दोनों में डिफरेंस है. हम लोग सोचते हैं मॉडर्नाइजेशन इज रिप्लेसमेंट ऑफ इंडियन कल्चर बाय वेस्टर्न कल्चर, और दूसरा धड़ा है वो सोचता है वैदिक काल में चले जाए. तो दोनों में से कोई नहीं बैठेगा. आपको अपने कल्चर को आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में रेलिवेंट बनाना पड़ेगा, थ्रू डेवलपमेंट, थ्रू वर्किंग, थ्रू ब्रिंगिंग इन मोर आइडियाज. एंड ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग, आई एम नॉट अगेंस्ट वैदिक हिंदुइज्म और एनीथिंग. मुझे लगता है कि वेस्ट में भी ओल्ड एज जो ग्रीक फिलोसफीज थे और फिलोसफर्स थे, जैसे प्लेटो, एरिस्टोटल, उनको पढ़ के उनको आज के समय में कैसे रेलिवेंट है वो समझ करके पश्चिम में उत्थान आया था. फिर आप
उसी के बाद तो आया थॉमस एक्वाइनस के बाद. पहले जब एरिस्टोटल और प्लेटो को भर भर के गाली देते थे तब कुछ उखाड़ नहीं पाते थे.
और फिर मॉडर्न हिंदुइज्म भी देखे, जैसे स्वामी विवेकानंद हो गए या जितने भी बंगाल के जितने भी महानुभाव थे, उन्होंने भी अब उपनिषद पढ़े, वेद पढ़े, फिर उसको आधुनिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट में लागू किया। ठीक है, तो हमें ये भी नहीं करना चाहिए कि पास्ट के टेक्स्ट है तो उसको रिजेक्ट कर दो, उसको पढ़ो ही मत। नहीं भाई, अपने देश का हिस्ट्री समझना, अपने पूर्वजों की थिंकिंग पैटर्न समझना बहुत जरूरी है, नहीं तो आप रूट से कट
एग्जैक्टली
जाएंगे। वही हुआ है, जैसे
हाँ,
संस्कृत
फॉलो करो
हटा
या
दिया
ना
हमारी
करो,
पढ़ाई में।
फॉलो करो या ना करो वो बात की बात है। पहली बात है कि तुमको समझना है कि ये एक रिपोर्टवर्ड है ऑफ द वे आवर एंसेस्टर्स थॉट। उसके लिए तो एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकली और सोशियोलॉजिकली स्पीकिंग बहुत बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है हर हिंदू टेक्स्ट पढ़ना।
हाँ, जैसे मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ, हमें आज जो रिचुअल्स लिखे वो फॉलो करना नहीं करना वो कोई बात नहीं है, हमें सिस्टम ऑफ थिंकिंग समझना सबसे बड़ी बात है, क्योंकि वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड डिफरेंट सिस्टम्स ऑफ थिंकिंग। क्योंकि आप अगर एक ही सिस्टम ऑफ थिंकिंग पे चलते जाते हैं ना, तो आपकी सोच छोटी हो जाती है। आप जब उसको कई प्रकार के सोचने के ढंग से, मतलब फ्रेमवर्क से सोचते हैं, तो आप देखते हैं आप ज्यादा
हाँ
कनेक्ट कर पाते हैं, आपका थिंकिंग ब्रॉडर होता है, आपके सॉल्यूशंस बेटर हो। तो मैं मानता हूँ
यस
आप सबको एक्सप्लोर कीजिए, इसमें कोई
यस
बुराई नहीं है। अ,
यस
और एक पॉइंट बोलने वाला था पर मैं, मेरे ध्यान से निकल गया ये बात बोलते बोलते।
ठीक है, तुम याद करके वापस आ जाओ।
हाँ
उसके पहले आनंद को ले लेते हैं, फिर
हाँ
तुम याद करके वापस आ जाओ। आई
हाँ
जस्ट रेस्पॉन्ड टू हियर टू लर्न हियर। ही इज सेइंग पारार भालोकाकू, the good guys from every party said, what did the ancient kings possibly do with tax money? I said, maybe fund gurukuls. He said, that means help spread darkness. Every oh my god, every every school in West Bengal, every government school, okay, most of the government schools in different villages and remote fucking villages are built in it like in years like 1840 1850s. How they were all gurukuls
आज
run
के
by the
दिन
local
बंगाल सरकार
zamindars,
क्या कर रहा है?
and they evolved into high schools run by the British for spreading darkness.
हाँ,
तो गुरुकुल
मुझे
के बाहर
एक्चुअली याद
बाहर
आया,
एकदम रोशनी थी।
मुझे एक्चुअली याद
या गो
आया मैं
अहेड।
क्या बोलने वाला था। ये जो स्पिरिचुअलिज्म और मटेरियल वर्ल्ड का जो चलता रहता है, आई थिंक ये हिंदू अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द वर्ल्ड नहीं थी। आप किसी ने यदि स्वामी सर्वप्रियानंद का लेक्चर समझा, एक लेक्चर है स्वामी सर्वप्रियानंद का, वो न्यूयॉर्क वेदांतिक सोसाइटी के है, आई थिंक वो भी बंगाली है। तो उन्होंने अपने लेक्चर में बोला था कि हमें ना तो संसार में डूब जाना चाहिए जहां आप एकदम स्पिरिचुअली इंक्लाइन नहीं है, ना आप स्पिरिचुअलिटी के बहाने से संसार से कट जाए। आपको संसार में ईश्वर को देखना है। जैसे आपकी पत्नी है या आपके बच्चे हैं, तो आपको उनमें ईश्वर देखना, अपने परिवार में ईश्वर देखना है। ये उनके विचार थे जो मुझे अच्छे लगे। तो उन्होंने कहा कि पहले अपने बच्चों के नाम देवी देवता के नाम पे रखते थे, जैसे राम, लक्ष्मी, महालक्ष्मी, क्योंकि उनका नाम लेते लाते आप ईश्वर का जप कर देते। तो वो उनके विचार थे। तो मेरा मानना है कि हिंदू कल्चर में हमारे स्पिरिचुअलिज्म को मटेरियलिज्म से जोड़ना पड़ेगा। जैसे लक्ष्मी, जब हम लक्ष्मी की बात करते हैं तो एक स्पिरिचुअल एस्पेक्ट है, पर एक प्रॉस्पेरिटी का भी एस्पेक्ट है कि अच्छे काम करके पैसे कमाना अच्छी बात है, अपने परिवार को सुखी रखना अच्छी बात है। इनफैक्ट गुजराती और ये जो हमारे बनिया कम्युनिटी है, मारवाड़ी बनिया कम्युनिटी है, इसमें लक्ष्मी पूजन को बहुत माना जाता है, स्पेशली दिवाली के पहले हम लोग करते हैं। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मटेरियलिज्म से डिस्कनेक्टेड है हमारी स्पिरिचुअलिटी। हमारे फैमिली वैल्यूज भी वैसे ही है कि फैमिली में अपने पत्नी का गृह लक्ष्मी मानना, या पति को परमेश्वर मानना, या बच्चों को ईश्वर का एक प्रकार से रूप मानना या उपहार मानना। तो हमें, मुझे लगता है हिंदू कॉन्सेप्ट्स पे पूरा एक सोशल साइंसेस बनाना पड़ेगा, जिस पर एक संगठन काम कर रहा है जिसका नाम है बृहत। पंकज सक्सेना और राघवा कृष्णा संस्थापक है दोनों। वो इस पर काम करने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं थोड़ा बहुत। अब वो कितना सफल होगा हमें देखना पड़ेगा। तो मेरे ये विचार थे।
उसके लिए जो ट्रेडिशनल सोशियोलॉजी है, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी है, उसका भी ज्ञान इक्वली लगेगा, और उसके बाद हिंदुइज्म का भी ज्ञान इक्वली लगेगा। दोनों फिर मिला पाएंगे। एक का ज्ञान से नहीं होगा, वो है प्रॉब्लम। पंकज सक्सेना तो आई थिंक वाज कॉलिंग फॉर द अरेस्ट ऑफ रणबीर अलाहाबादिया, नो, और beheading भी। डू यू रिमेंबर एनीथिंग अबाउट पंकज सक्सेना एंड रणबीर अलाहाबादिया?
नो, मतलब मैंने उनके बारे में तो नहीं सुना कि उन्होंने रणबीर अलाहाबादिया
अच्छा।
को क्या कहा। पर
अच्छा।
मुझे लगता है वो लोग ऐसे सोच में इतने ज्यादा ट्रेडिशनलिस्ट नहीं है, मैंने जितना उनके चैनल को देखा।
आई सी।
मैंने देखा है कि वो दे आर क्वाइट ओपन। तो
आई
मुझे
सी।
लगता है आप क्योंकि थोड़ा सा मेन स्ट्रीम एकेडेमिया में गए हैं, आप ज्यादातर जो मेन स्ट्रीम एकेडेमिया जो वेस्टर्न प्रोसेसेस से जो रिसर्च होता है आप उसमें देखते हैं, जो कि अच्छी बात है, ये काम करना भी जरूरी है। मुझे लगता है थोड़ा आप जैसे लोग और जो थोड़े भारतीय साइड के लोग होते हैं ना, जो थोड़ा हिंदू टेक्स्ट की ओर ज्यादा ध्यान देते, उनको कोलैबोरेशन यदि करे तो आई थिंक समथिंग गुड कैन कम।
Yes. Yes. Did anybody else have anything to add, or we will just check out these pictures
One
and then go
thing.
home? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter. Who is speaking? Oh, Rishabh. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Rishabh.
Thanks. Yeah, just closing out, what Anand and Abhay said. बात एकदम सच है, but ultimately, you need to have that marketplace of ideas. और उसमें if you have say 4 ideas, okay, one is go back to the Vedic age, one is go back to caste, full on trad like casteism, one is go completely socialist, and one is have a modern capitalist nation. We need idols for all of these. बाकियों के पास idols हैं. What I am worried about is that the quadrant that we are most aligned with, we don't allow anyone to become, icons over there. Like who are the main capitalist icons of the 21st century? And I don't mean the
Joggot
Tatas
shit.
because it.
हाँ, इसमें मेरा एक
जगत
पॉइंट है।
शेठ के अलावा जगत शेठ के अलावा
इसमें
किसी का
मेरा
नाम पता भी नहीं होगा, क्योंकि वैश्याज को तो ग्लोरीफाई नहीं किया जाता था किसी टेक्स्ट में, तो तुमको नाम भी नहीं मिलेंगे। सिर्फ ये गिल्ड वो गिल्ड, हाँ प्रॉस्पेरिटी था, ये
I don't care about.
स्तुति
I
शेठ
don't
क्या
care
है?
about 200 years ago. I'm talking about today. People who are alive and breathing
ओह
today.
अच्छा, ओके ओके।
Yeah,
अब
गया
देखिए,
वो जमाना गया. Go ahead, समझिए.
अब देखिए, सब हमारे यहाँ ये देवता बनाना या भगवान बनाने का बहुत कल्चर है। जैसे बिरसा मुंडा को बना दिया या अंबेडकर को बना दिया, तो मार्केट प्लेस ऑफ आइडियाज में सबके भगवान है। पर हमारे यहाँ कैपिटलिज्म के लिए और खासकर धार्मिक कैपिटलिज्म के लिए कोई भगवान नहीं। आप देखिए, मतलब उस प्रकार से जिसकी माला चढ़ाते हो या पूजा अर्चना करते हो, जैसे अंबानी का कोई आरती नहीं उतारता जैसे अम्बेडकर का उतार। तो मे बी हम क्योंकि थोड़ा सा वेस्टर्न लेंस से देखते, तो हम जो हिंदू साइड को अट्रैक्ट करना है अपने आइडियाज की ओर, मे बी हमको सोचना चाहिए कि हमें देवी देवता बनाने पड़ेंगे अपने, लिबर्टेरियन देवता, जिससे वो उसकी पूजा अर्चना से लिबर्टेरियनिज्म अपना ले।
There's an old saying,
ये तो
and
बहुत
adding on to
बुरा
your
लगा।
point,
Yeah.
Abhay, there is an old saying, लक्ष्मी उन्हीं को मिलती है, लक्ष्मी बहती है, ये लक्ष्मी होर्ड नहीं कर सकते हम, महालक्ष्मी का वो अपमान होता है, वो बहती है. दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी रियली नीड टू स्टार्ट सेइंग, दैट पीपल नीड टू अर्न, पीपल नीड टू कंज्यूम, पीपल नीड टू स्पेंड, and we need to bring that into the fold of Hinduism. And I totally agree with you. I wouldn't go as far as saying कि भैया माला चढ़ाओ आरती उतारो, but we need to celebrate these people. We need to celebrate people like नारायण मूर्ति. वो बेचारे एक स्टेटमेंट दे दिया जो गलत भी नहीं था इतना, उसको लेके सब चढ़ गए थे उसके सर पे. अरे जिसको काम करना है करेगा.
क्या
Bloody
क्या
hell, you people are
क्या
idiots who
क्या
don't
क्या
know.
क्या
इनको समझ
लोगों
में
के
नहीं
लिए
आता
2.5
वो तो
लाख
विंडो
3 लाख
शिफ्ट
का
हो रहा
पर
है आज।
एनम इनकम इज अ ह्यूज थिंग. मतलब जो लोग प्रिविलेज का रोते हैं, you have no idea what 3 lakhs 4 lakhs per annum can do for a person in this country still today. The highest amount of privilege is be crying about doing too much work.
मैं क्या और ये लोग
Yeah.
समझते भी नहीं है इसका
तो ओवरटाइम विंडो
सोल्यूशन
इतना
क्या
शिफ्ट
है।
हो गया है कि तो कोई कॉमी तो आके हमारा लाइव स्ट्रीम देख के हमारा लाइव स्ट्रीम देख के कॉमिया सुसाइड कर लेगा। कोई बोल रहा है कि चांद सौदागर को पूजा करते हैं, कोई बोल रहा है अंबानी को पूजा करते हैं, कोई बोल रहा है नारायण मूर्ति को पूजा करते हैं। ओह माय गॉड, व्हाट हैव वी डन? हमने क्या ब्रेनवॉश कर दिया लोगों को?
मैं ऋषभ की बात पर
divergent here. I'm a little divergent.
अच्छा sorry,
here.
I'll just make one quick point. अभी मेरी लक्ष्मी का भी कॉल आ रहा है, तो I have to drop off soon. But just one quick point, हाँ, like we need to start looking forward. ये बार-बार हो रहा है. All of our opinions, all of our idols, all of our views, they keep on going to the back, to the history of our land. Fine, we can take inspiration from there, but again that will calcify our society going forward. We need to look at idols today. We need to look at people who are looking forward for us. Idolize the Zerodha founders, idolize Narayan Murthy, and use these people into main narrative. हम लोग को celebrate करना होगा. ये सिर्फ मुंबई और बैंगलोर में celebrate होते हैं, वो भी not enough. We need to make sure that we start. I don't know how, genuinely, and that's an open question. How do we do this? But we need to start creating this system where we start explaining to people that extractive capitalism, that is not capitalism. That is it was a weird failed mercantilism belief system. And at the time of that, I would have talked about mercantilism of the British versus capitalism of the Americans, and why the British fell and why the Americans are still there. Maybe some other day. But that was not even capitalism. Capitalism is Indian capital for Indian consumers and Indian workers. That is what we need to somehow hammer into the heads of everyone. Free market of ideas, oh, very good. But like Anand said, I don't want communism. There needs to be a underlying framework. अगर वो underlying framework में हम अपने आप को नहीं स्थापित करेंगे ना, तो फिर हम जितना भी हम लोग conversations कर ले यहाँ पे, it will not matter to the average person. They don't care about high philosophy. They care about outcomes, and that's about it. So on that note, I'll take a leave.
Go ahead, Anand.
I want to disagree on
Go ahead,
on the fundamental premise. So first of all, I agree with him on the capitalism point that mercantilism and capitalism were significantly different, right? The idea fundamentally, again, we are taking the framing of capitalism from the communists, because they write most of the scholarship around the world. Like literally, they write, because everything is framed versus the so-called establishment of different countries, and they're the ones who wrote most of that literature. So they frame capitalism the way they wanted to frame it. But fundamentally, at a fundamental level, capitalism is owning of private property, the fruits of your labor, which has always happened since the dawn of time. Like since the dawn of dawn of time, the dawn of nature. Like when a bird creates a nest and it is waiting for a mate to increase its propagating prospects, it is practicing capitalism. It is taking goods from the region, it is building a product, and it is marketing it to a customer. That customer is providing it with an egg, which is allowing it to propagate its species. So that's the solution. So that is basically the fundamentals of capitalism. The problem with the way we accept the leftist framing is capitalism is always extractive. Like, this bird went and took some flower from some plant and the nectar from another place or whatever shit. But fundamentally, it's not damaging the ecosystem, right? The way the leftist frames it is all capitalism is extractive and all capitalism damages society. In spite of the fact that they need capitalism for communism to exist, right? So my problem is we should not be celebrating people like Narayan Murthy, because again, I disagree with I think Rishi, was it Rishi, right?
Rishabh.
Narayan Murthy has created temporary wealth in a system where our hard work is being extracted for the benefit of the foreigner. You understand? We are basically the same as the British. The British basically kept large amounts of Macaulay Putra, and they were doing all their filing for them. We're doing the filing for Americans sitting in India. That's all.
Actually, we could have capitalized on that.
We could have. They do it now. We do, but my point is, don't celebrate Narayan Murthy, because Narayan Murthy was looking to benefit himself and maybe this provide cheap labor to.
उन्होंने ये नहीं सोचा कि उन्होंने जो पैसे कमाए हैं उससे वो यदि रिसर्च और डेवलपमेंट करते, कुछ बनाते, तो इट कुड हैव बीन वेरी डिफरेंट। आज हमारे पास अपना बड़ा एआई होता या माइक्रोसॉफ्ट होता और वो वर्ल्ड में उसका बहुत प्रभाव हो,
Exactly. So
हमारा
my
ग्लोबल मार्केट होता।
So that's all. I was coming to my point. The point you're coming to my point exactly. So we should be celebrating people, capitalists, who build what do you call it? Fundamental IP in India. I think I mentioned this on Navavimarsh also on one of his posts. Fundamentally, our investment, our focus should not be FDI. Our focus should be capitalists in India who invest in local IP, intellectual property that cannot be taken out of our country, right? Local IP, local developments. So, for example, what ISRO is doing, ISRO is a very good example of localized capitalism, right? They're building
But
for the
that
country,
is,
they're building for the society.
but that is funded by the government, Anand.
I mean, but the government has to assist at some point because we are starting from the ground. We're all broken, like our legs are all broken. So someone needs to help us stand up first, and then once the legs are strong, we can start running, and then we can go run on your own, right? It's like the state's job is to provide the basic requirements for citizens to walk on their own. And to me, unfortunately, we still require that for a while. Just for a while, we still need it. We can't just suddenly start running. It's not possible. So I'm glad what ISRO is doing. That finally they're opening up the safe space sector. See how many youngsters are building their own companies and what they will achieve in the next generation. So for me, that is true what we should celebrate.
आपको पता है
If ISRO
एआईएम
didn't
ने
exist,
एक कंपनी की बात की थी, क्या ग्रीन रोब, क्या तो ग्रीन आई ना, क्या नाम था कंपनी का, जिसने अभी जो ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में जो डिफेंस सिस्टम यूज हुआ है,
Yeah.
हैदराबाद की कंपनी,
Yes, yes.
इंडियन, उसने बनाया था वो सोल्यूशन और बहुत ही चीप सोल्यूशन बनाया था।
Yes.
इजराइल
Exactly.
जैसे आयरन डोम से पैसा खर्च करता है अपने आप को बचाने के लिए, उसका क्या मतलब 100 या 1/10 भी कॉस्ट नहीं था इंडिया जब अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट कर रहा
That is
था।
what innovation. We need innovation. That kind of innovation we need.
I
The
think
Narayan Murthy
those
will make
people
money for the
need
country.
to be
But
celebrated. Those people
sorry.
need to be celebrated. Those
Exactly.
people
Exactly.
need to be celebrated.
Exactly. That's what we need. IP, Indian IP. That's what will change the country completely. That's what will make even the Indian the Bharatiya proud of his identity. When you have your own IP and you can say this is my IP, you cannot. No one else can make this IP. That's when the Bharatiya will be proud and he will build his own ecosystems. Until we provide for someone, we are essentially digital coolie for someone else. It's not going to happen.
पर एक
अच्छा एक मिनट
कॉलोनाइजेशन भी है।
बटल मानो
हाँ ऋषभ आप बोलिए।
Thank you. Sorry, I had to come back to this. So we are shifting the burden of being the bhalo kaku from the government to the private individual. क्या कि कोई आएगा IP बनाएगा? We can't do that. Right? See, the reason why I said Narayan Murthy specifically was because he got the ball rolling of modern wealth generation in this country. A lot of what we are discussing is very downstream of the doors that people like him opened. And I'm just using him as an example. Again, like I said, I don't believe in great men in history. I believe in systems, putting in place systems. And yeah, everything that we have today in our defense sector is something to be celebrated. But we need idols and sure, celebrate these companies too. Of course, that's what I'm saying. Sir. Celebrate the Kamath brothers also. They have also done some great innovative work. But the larger point that I'm saying is celebrate the people who bring in wealth to our country. Indian IP was something that was unthinkable in the days that Narayan Murthy set up Infosys. The inflow of wealth, even though it was going out to serve foreign clients, the inflow of wealth that happened as a byproduct of this stopgap measure, I agree. It's something that's not ideal. It's a stopgap. For me, the ideal is Indian capital for Indian consumers with Indian labor. Of course, but कुछ तो किया, he got people like him. I wouldn't say him alone, but him and people like him got the ball rolling in a sector where we could have not imagined, working things working out very well. He saw an opportunity and he capitalized on it. That is what we need to celebrate. Sure.
But
आज के go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, that has to be celebrated. But I just got reminded of Sanjeev Sanyal's podcast, where he said that we have not been able to create big CA firms and all of that because of these guilds and professional bodies. One sector that did not have such a body was the IT sector, and it boomed.
Yes, of
So,
course,
so
100%.
yes, maybe Narayan Murthy was really brilliant enough to see that there is a chance here, and he capitalized on it. But I also think that I understand that the government here is to blame for many things, but it is also a cultural and social problem also that we cannot think beyond the point, or we cannot think big. All we can think of is serving some gora. The problem is we can't think beyond it. कभी ना कभी तो गोरे के ऊपर सोचना पड़ेगा ना कि गोरे को कब तक चापलूसी करेंगे. हाँ
जिस दिन हमारे पास घोड़े जितना पैसा हो जाएगा हम कर लेंगे.
वही तो
उतना
गोरे
बनाना
जितना
तो पड़ेगा ना बट.
तो
No, no.
How
बनाना
do you get from A
अब
to B?
बना लिया. द पॉइंट इज अब बना लिया है तो अब उसको कंसोलिडेट करना पड़ेगा ना अपने पास, और अपना कुछ प्रोडक्ट क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा. वो मैं देखता हूँ बहुत जल्दी लोग नहीं सोचते, वो वहीं पर फंस के रह जाते कि गोरा को सर्व करें.
No, no, I'll tell you
वो
what.
एक
This is not,
प्रॉब्लम है.
this is not specific about the Gora. It is about this idea of scarcity. So Indians are pushed by the idea of scarcity. They're worried where their next paycheck will come from. It has become a cultural, almost like an addiction. Just like throwing trash is a culture. It's an addiction in India, right? I don't see them as social evils or civic sense. I see it as an addiction. We're addicted to throwing trash. We're addicted to the this fear. It's like a thing that we want to keep this fear of where will our next paycheck come from, right? So even the venture capitalist, when he provides money for a investment, he's like, "Can I get back my money in 3 months so I do not lose too much money?" That attitude is pervasive in Indian cultural society. That
I
needs to
think
change some fundamental level. My opinion
I
is that.
think we are a very insecure, and we are living in the mindset of scarcity, not in the mindset of
Exactly.
abundance.
That's what I said.
The
That's exactly.
हाँ,
the
100%.
issue is
वही तो
it is
colonized mind है वो.
वो
No, no, no,
हम
no. I
देखते
don't
हैं
think it's colonized. I don't think it's not about colonization. It's about the fact that we have gone through so much, almost I think, couple of at least 2 millennia of consistent damage in our. I mean, not 1 millennia, not 2 millennia. 1 millennia of consistent damage of our work of our capitalist ethic. So that is basically built that the risk taking is significantly lower, but it's changing now. I will say it is changing significantly now in the next
ये
generation, but still
इसका
long way to go.
इसका मैनिफेस्टेशन मैंने और भी बहुत जगह देखा है. जैसे कन्वर्जन्स को लेके जब भी बात होती है, या पॉपुलेशन को लेके, डेमोग्राफिक्स को लेके, सब बोलते हैं पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल बिल लाओ, एंटी कन्वर्जन बिल लाओ. कोई ये नहीं बोलता कि हम लोग ऐसा सिस्टम कैसे बनाएं कि हम लोग दूसरे को कन्वर्ट करें. हम ऐसा सिस्टम कैसे बनाएं कि हम दूसरे को आउट पॉपुलेट करें. वो पॉजिटिव थिंकिंग का बहुत अभाव है. मैं देखता हूँ पॉलिसी मेकिंग में भी, सोच में भी, या हम जो मांग करते हैं अपने सरकार से, हम बचाने के लिए अपने आप को मांग करते हैं. हम कभी ये नहीं सोचते कि हमको शक्तिशाली बनाओ जिससे हम लोग दुनिया जीत सके. वो सोच नहीं है. वो स्कैरसिटी माइंडसेट से ही आता है वो चीज.
Yeah. On this dark and happy note, we will end the live stream now, and just we will end with a discussion of this place. Okay, so one person actually answered it correctly. What is this place? This place is called the Black Hole of Kolkata, a monument talking about the Black Hole of Kolkata. Okay, this monument used to be in Dalhousie Square. It's now inside Park Street Cemetery. Netaji at one point wanted to destroy this. He was prevented from doing so, and then it was shifted to the Park Street Cemetery because nationalists all the time were trying to destroy this one. Now, what this commemorates is a very dark story. Okay, this is an insane story. About 200 people are mentioned in these plaques. Okay, so this was made in 1756, and to commemorate something that happened just about like 1 or 2 years back, I think pretty recently at that point. So Sirajuddola's army rounded up a bunch of about 200 British officers and threw them in a dungeon under Fort William, probably. I think Fort William was under Sirajuddaullah's reign. For that day, that's when they basically annexed Fort William, as far as I remember. But if not Fort William, in some other holding spot in Kolkata only, Sirajuddaullah's army came from Murshidabad to Kolkata and rounded them up, threw them in a dungeon, and next day, about 180 or 190 of them died just because of the way they were kept. They absolutely starved and suffocated to death. Not starved, suffocated to death because of the way they were crumpled inside in one goddamn tight room. And the extent was such, the uproar was such regarding this from, I guess, all quarters, that a guy like Sirajuddaulah at a time like that actually ended up saying that, yeah, this was a mistake. Can you believe, at a time like 1756 or 55, that's when Sirajuddaulah is saying, yes, we went a little too overboard. And then the British created this story, created this monument to commemorate that incident. That dungeon came to be called Black Hole of Kolkata. Now, the Dalhousie Square is where that black hole actually existed, okay, that dungeon. So it's not Fort William. Okay, who's A? Do you have something to add on this topic, A? Oh, A left. Okay, whoever was A is now B. So that's the story of this Black Hole of Kolkata, guys. So see you tomorrow. This is a dark story. On this bright note, we will end our live stream now.
One thing
Thank
on
you,
the
guys.
dark
Thanks
story.
a lot for joining.
One thing on the dark
Okay,
story.
Anand. Yeah, go ahead.
As a closing.
Yeah.
I will never get why right-wingers want to destroy history, because if you destroy history, then you can't remember that these dark things happened and we should not have to let it happen again. I never get that logic, but I guess some people.
A lot of liberals give me that argument in the context of Babri Masjid as well.
As in? I didn't understand.
Why destroy history? Make a different Ram Mandir. Why destroy history?
No, but Babri Masjid has already been etched by destroying the Babri Masjid. You already know it's forever going to be known that the place got destroyed. This is different. No, this is like
No.
It is not a religious structure. This thing.
The
It's never going to replace it. That's going to permanently tell you that this is what this happened here. You understand what I'm saying, right? The Ram Mandir literally will be the way showing that this is what we removed. We removed this horrible structure and we put the Ram Mandir there, because they put a plaque also there saying that the Babri Masjid has been removed and gotten back to Ram Mandir.
The thing with Babri Masjid is it was not entirely history. It was a continuous fight. So it was a part of our present as well. So it cannot be just ignored or labeled as history and done away with. No. It was a continuous fight.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying this particular black hole, this structure.
No.
If you destroy it, you need to put something else in its place to commemorate it.
I understand. I understand about the black hole structure that you said. I'm just talking about Babri Masjid. It's not a piece of history, because the war has been going on till present. It's a present thing. It's a living thing. That thing which we talk.
Right.
History will end when we decide it ends.
Or history will end when the winner basically says it is going to end. We should make sure we are the winners.
Yeah. Varun Dev is saying, Dada, check my comment on Deng. Before Deng opened markets in China, he trained his citizens for it. Didn't just do it randomly. Hence, transition was comparatively smooth than us. See, for training and telling people, see, now you need to train in this, because from tomorrow we are going to do that. That can happen only in a dictatorship, not in a democracy. So, वो idea छोड़ देते हैं पहले. Amog was elaborating on this story. Okay. Yeah.
Tiananmen Square किसने किया? कोई?
That's Mao. Or was it?
No, it was Deng Xiaoping, not Mao.
Deng.
It was not Mao.
Oh.
And it's not Deng.
Tiananmen Square में तो बहुत बार कुछ हुआ है.
It's Deng Xiaoping.
Okay.
Deng Xiaoping.
The grammar Nazi. Okay then. Thanks a lot for joining the live stream,
I've met a lot of Chinese people, sir. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See you tomorrow, guys. Good night.
যদি সবাই ফিরে যায় ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায় যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায় তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।